Welcome one and all. It's time for yet another spicy, beard-tastic tournament report. A war of grudges. And it's the old world back on the menu, dwarves back on the battlefield, beards flowing, axes ready to strike, and Ungrim, the young, future king of the Slayers, ready to roll. So, 2,000 points, 5 games from the TSN arena. Now, this is a unique event because it has 6 players, so everybody gets to play everybody else once. So, you know exactly all the different lists you're going to be facing at the start. And this took place on the same weekend as an Old World event at Warhammer World. So I think everyone at this event were the people who couldn't get their tickets in time for Warhammer World, and then said, you know what, I'll go and do a little event instead of paying even more money for the joy of playing at Warhammer World. So, let's dive in and look at my list, shall we? So, we have got the mighty Ungrim, the Slayer King, future Slayer King. I don't think he's quite a king yet at this point in time. Oh, by the way, good evening to the people in the chat. We've got Saurus, we've got Nuke, we've got Gilthos in there. Hello. So, Ungrim, what does he bring to the table other than a mighty axe, beard, and a large amount of hair? So, if you stick him in the hammerers, he makes them unbreakable, which is nice. He's also pretty good at killing stuff, and there's a chance that if he wounds a monster, it just dies. So, that could be good. And other than that, he also has a 5-up ward, which he's going to get anyway in this list. And he also has magic resistance 2, like a lot of the Slayer type units. So, overall, mostly making them unbreakable and being a bit murdery in the fight. Here's 315 points. Continuing the heroes, characters, we have the Anvil of Doom. No runes on it whatsoever, because it's only in the list for one reason, and I'll tell you what that reason is when we get to the end of the list, but I can tell you now that about 1,500 points of this list is purely to get one unit in combat. And if that doesn't work, I'm doomed. If it does work, woo! So, nothing fancy on the anvil at all. We then have a runesmith. You might be thinking, wait a minute, you've got the anvil and a runesmith. What's going on here? Some kind of dwarven trickery afoot. So this runesmith has 3 spell-breaking runes, so he's got 3 auto-dispels, and the anvil does not. Interesting. That would suggest that the runesmith is going to be getting closer to the enemy than the anvil is. Beard stroking intensifies. Then we've got a BSB. The Thane BSB has the following upgrades. So he's got a great weapon, he has got a shield, and the Master Rune of Grungni for the 5+ ward save, which is very handy on the hammerers. And he's also got the Rune of Confusion, which is 1/2 of the usual combo. So the Rune of Confusion means that enemy units charging the front arc make a disordered charge, which means that they don't get their initiative bonus. And then on the hammerers is the other end of that combo, which is the Master Rune of Hesitation, which means that you can't use weapons or special rules from charging, such as lances or impact hits or any of that good stuff. Some rules give you extra attacks on the charge, so you won't get any of that stuff. You wouldn't get your initiative bonus if you charge the hammerers in the front with the Thane in there. And then because the hammerers still count as being charged, they get their +1 attack and +1 initiative. So if you're initiative 3 or lower, and you charge into the front of the hammerers will be hitting you first, and with way more attacks than they usually have. Let's see, Nuke Command says, where did it say you can't use impact hits? So I will read out the wording of it here for you. Just pulling that up now. So, the Master Rune of Hesitation. So, it does not count as having charged for the purposes of choosing which weapon to use or any special rules it may have. So, to my understanding, that would include impact hits, which is a special rule that you get when charging. Then, what else have we got? So that's the hammerers. Oh, by the way, since we're on them, they've also got the Stroller's Rune, which means that they can make a 3-inch Vanguard move at the start of the game. I think you're starting to see where this list is going now. Then, in the core section, we have 15 Dwarf Warriors with a command and nothing else. Then we've got 16 Rangers, the way I usually run them, which is great weapons, crossbows, throwing axes, shields, and a champion and a standard bearer. So they've got throwing axes for stand and shoot at point blank range, and 30-inch range on the crossbows, great weapons, so pretty tasty. I haven't given them any runes on their banner this time. Then we've got 10 Thunderers over there for a bit of 24-inch range firepower, and if I have a nice hill I could sit them on it. Then, in special, we've got 2 Gyrocopters, just standard Gyrocopters with the steam guns, no upgrades there. And we've then got the Hammerers, yep, and I also didn't mention, by the way, I think it's on the Thane as the Rune of Passage, which means they get the move through cover and can reroll 1s when they're doing the dangerous terrain tests. So that benefits the whole unit, which is very nice. Then we have the Dwarf Cart, Bugman's Pony Cart, the Grudge Pony, and very recently painted. I painted Ungrim. I spent like 6 hours painting him just before the eve of the event, and the Pony Cart was also painted during the week as well. And what does the Pony Cart do? Well, it can add +1 to movement if it's nearby to a unit. So, with the final entry in the list being the Doom Seeker, so 50 points, no upgrades, wants to get himself killed. If he survives the game, my opponent scores 50 points. If he dies, they don't score anything. So he's going to throw himself out there and seek his own demise. See if he can take anything down with him, though. So, what is the aim of this list? The Hammerers are going to contain a Runesmith to give them a load of auto-dispels. They're going to contain the BSB, so they have the ultimate anti-charge combo. They're going to contain Ungrim, so they're going to be unbreakable, and they're going to have some even more serious killing power than they usually possess, because he's just obscene in combat. Well, he only has 4 attacks, so I shouldn't say obscene, but he does have Monster Slayer, weapon skill 9, toughness 6, so he's very sturdy. Strength 4, but his axe gives him +2, and -3 on the AP as well. So, that's going to be a very nasty unit. The plan is that it's going to move up 3 inches with the Vanguard move from the Stroller's Rune. It's then going to be in marching column in the first turn. It's going to advance with the aid of the Pony Cart, giving it +1 movement. It's going to move forward 12 inches. Then, the Anvil is going to try and cast a Conveyance spell on it to move it again. And it'll go wide again, so I've got a larger frontage and get all the characters back into the front rank. And then, it's going to be about 8 wide, or, yeah, roughly 8 in the first turn, hopefully, if the Conveyance spell goes off. And then they move forward another 8 inches in the march. So they can potentially move 23 inches in the first turn. So if I go first, and you don't fly, and you've got these Hammerers in front of your face, that's going to be an interesting situation, shall we say. So, what is that going to work against as a list combo? First of all, I don't think it's ultra competitive, because there are some definite hard counters to it. But I think it is going to be hilarious, and if there are any lists in this event who can't get out the way of it, then it's going to be great. If there's anything with Frenzy or Impetuous, that's going to be ideal as well, because they obviously don't want to charge you, because it would be ludicrous to charge into the front of this unit. You might as well just set the models on fire rather than send them in there. So, Frenzy or Impetuous would be great if I could land right in front of them. The reason the Gyrocopters are in there is because the plan that they have is they're going to move up alongside the Hammerers. And if anyone decides, you know what, I don't want to fight these Hammerers who are now charging me, I'm just going to flee. Well, the Gyrocopter is also going to be charging them at the same time. So that means anyone who does flee from the Hammerers, there is a very high chance that a Swift Stride Gyrocopter with movement 9 is going to catch and run down the unit. So more than likely they probably just won't bother fleeing when the Gyrocopter is also involved. Because fleeing from the Hammerers, if they're, let's say, 4 inches away from you, on average, you would expect to get away from them. But with the gyro in there, suddenly, your unit is very likely dying if you flee, so you might just want to stay there and take your chances with the Hammerers. So that's why the 2 gyrocopters are in there. That's their entire role in this game. So the hammer unit contains all the characters except the Doomseeker. The gyrocopters are purely there to deter the enemy from fleeing. The anvil's purely there to convey the hammerers. And the pony cart is purely there to give them extra movement. So the core and the Doomseeker are the only units that aren't directly tied to getting this hammerer unit into a fight. Everything else is purely there for that purpose. And that unit, when it has all the characters in, is over 1,000 points. So, let's go into the first game and see if any of this is going to work. And what's that? I'm against Rob, the honest wargamer himself, with some Chaos Warriors. Yeah, so I got him to... Well, he wanted to pose with the army first of all, and then I said, can you do a sad one as well, just in case you lose? But I thought I'll show you both of them anyway, so you can see the 2 sides of Rob there. So we'll see which one is required at the end of this game. But I'm going to pull up his list right here. So of the 6 players at this event, there were 3 Warriors of Chaos, 2 Brettonians, and 1 Dwarf list, which is obviously mine. So there's going to be 2 games against Brettonians, 3 against Warriors of Chaos. This here is one of the 2 lists I am more confident against, because there are actual infantry, which some of the other lists lack. And that means that I'm going to be able to, hopefully, if I get the first turn, zoop the hammerers right up there, lock some of the units, and then start charging them and killing things with the hammerers. So, what does Rob have in his list here? Cracking it open now. So, good evening to Wraith and John and Stu in there. Hello. Yes, fast dwarves. This is total madness. And while definitely not a high competitive list, this is going to be hilarious when it works. So, we've got Warriors of Tzeentch, Chaos Warriors. There is a Demon Prince who is 415 points on the hill up there. So, there he is. And he is the General. He flies. He's got the Mark of Tzeentch. 4 spells, level 4. Battle Magic. Spell Familiar, which is the one that lets you choose the spells, I think. So, he's going to be flapping his wings, flying around, doing spells, rather than fighting, I imagine. There is an Exalted Sorcerer who is in this unit. I think there might be multiples, actually. I think is there 3 Sorcerers here. So, one of them is a level... Let's see. Level 2 Sorcerer, a level 2 Sorcerer, and a level 4 Sorcerer. So, 3 different ones. And do they all have... They all have Battle Magic, so potentially 4 Pillars of Fire going out there. And... the one that's level 4 has the Skull of Katam. The other 2 have, let's see, a Spell Familiar and a Spell Familiar. So I think that's the one where you choose your spells. So they're all going to be choosing spells quite handily. And yeah, so it's 4 wizards, 2 level 4s, 2 level 2s. My army is kind of designed to shut down magic, but on the other hand I've only got 3 auto dispels, and other than that it's relying on the anvil mostly. And also my innate magic resistance. But if you're dropping down Pillars of Fire, you don't care about magic resistance, because it doesn't specifically target an enemy unit, so that wouldn't come into it at all. So the 3 auto dispels are going to get used up pretty quick in this game, I imagine, and then I've got to start killing wizards before I run out. Because the anvil is not moving towards the enemy. So those are the heroes. In the core, there are 3 units of Chaos Warriors, one with 12, one with 10, and one with 10. So... there's 10 out there, 10 here, with a sorcerer in there, and I believe they are some kind of Chaos Dwarf models, but clearly representing Chaos Warriors here. Then the unit of 12 here with 2 wizards in it. There is also, in special, 3 Dragon Ogres who are there, so they're pretty tasty, and they've got a Shartak, who is the champion of the unit. Then there is a Hell Cannon. So fearsome looking machine, but the rules don't look terribly scary. So we'll see how that works out. Anyway, so for my deployment, you can see that the Rangers, they're not that eager to go up there. And the only thing that's going to be going super fast towards the enemy are the Hammerers and its accompaniments. I'm going to try and get the Hammerers all the way up there. And then the Anvil of Doom can of course use its magic missile on the enemy from quite long range. The Doomseeker is hanging back defending my lines, and the Rangers are kind of doing that as well, because all this stuff is kind of fragile. The Thunderers, the Anvil, and 15 Warriors, not that great, so they do need something to protect them while the Hammerers off on their adventures, having fun on the other side of the table. So, everyone has got Pillar of Fire, by the way, so there can be potentially 4 of those cast. Look at the enlarged, sculpted butt cheeks on the Doomseeker there, on Alric Big Butts, the Slayer. I'm going to paint a couple of actual Doomseeker models as well, because they are very fun. So you can see, because I've started in marching column, the heroes aren't actually in the back. They're probably supposed to be in the second rank here somewhere for now. But they're just sitting there until I move again, and then I'll go wider and everyone will pop up in the front rank again. So, turn 1 goes to me, and this is what is staring down my opponent in the first round. So, I haven't quite gone 23 inches, because what I don't want to do is get multi-flank charged. The Hammerers don't actually care about being flank charged by 1 unit, because they're unbreakable. Ungrim could smash his way through the ranks to fight anyway. But I don't want the enemy to get their charge bonuses. I don't want them to be striking before me, and I don't want them to be hitting with weapons that might get a bonus on the charge. And I want to be hitting back with loads of attacks, so I want to make sure everything's in the front. So if I'd gone any further than that, I'd risk giving up flank charges to the Chaos Warriors and to the Dragon Ogres, and also maybe the Hell Cannon, which can actually fight. It's not just an artillery piece. So the Gyrocopters are in position. The Pony Cart has moved up fast as well. That's movement 6, so it can make some good distance. Let's see, Minding Lies was just looking at a 4 and 1 Dwarf list that seemed to be using a similar strategy, but with long beards and with Grudge Thrower support instead of gyros. That is very legit. Definitely a thing that can work. Grudge Throwers are definitely very good. The fact that I only have 1 of them painted, though, is the reason why I'm not using them too much right now. I do have a second one, the more recent model, which I'm going to paint very soon. So I'll have 2, which is the point at which I think they start to become dangerous when you add 2 of them. Because on average, you should be hitting something probably each turn then, with 2 of them, you'd be hoping. So that's how it looks. The Forces of Chaos just staring down this horrible unit of Hammerers that has been conveyed by the Anvil up there. You can see that that skull is representing the improved armour as well from the Anvil's enchantment. So if it's the skull, it's the not quite as good version, so they can just reroll armour saves. They don't have the +1, which requires an 11 to cast, so I didn't get that. And if I did, the other side of the token is swirly. So, if you are Chaos, what do you do here? Do you throw anything into combat with the Hammerers? Because there is a reason you might. The thing is, the Runesmith in there, if you get him tied up in combat, I can't stop any of your spells. And if your entire game plan is, for example, Pillars of Fire, then you might be tempted to just sacrifice a unit into the front of the Hammerers, get everyone else out of the way, and then start dropping Pillars of Fire around them. So that is an option. Not necessarily a good option, though, because if you go into the front of the Hammerers, there's a good chance they'll kill you, and then overrun, and potentially get to your other units behind. So there is risk involved in that, of course. But if you're staying back and you tie up the Runesmith, I don't have anything to dispel with, because the Anvil is all the way back in my deployment zone, obviously. So we'll see what Rob comes up with for his Forces of Chaos. So the first thing he does, and probably quite wisely, he moves both of his sorcerers out of this block of warriors, decides they're not going to get out of the way, so they're just going to stay here and take it, but the sorcerers are getting out of the way first, so they don't get annihilated. The Demon Prince hops over, and he's going to start trying to cast spells from here. He obviously doesn't want to get charged by Hammerers with the Demon Prince, because that would be a lot of points to give away, and they would probably make mincemeat of the Demon Prince, especially if Ungrim gets an unsaved wound that, I think it's if you roll a 6 to wound. So there's a reasonable chance he could do that. The other Warriors of Chaos are hiding behind the woods over here, because I think they believe if they just go forward, they'll get shot to death by the Rangers, and there's no point in them doing that. These other ones have also shed their sorcerer, so all the sorcerers are hiding at the back. All the Chaos Warriors are slowly maybe planning to feed themselves into the Hammerers. The Dragon Ogres are staring at the flank. So you can see that I'm down to 1 auto dispel, which is what this dice is representing. I started with 3, so that was denying various Pillars of Fire. And you'll see that the Gyrocopters start getting hit with various spells as well, and they both get killed, which is very sad. But on the other hand, that means that the hammerers haven't been targeted, so I can kind of live with it. So, into my turn 2, and the hammerers blast themselves straight into combat with the Chaos Warriors, and the hammerer champion goes into a challenge with the Chaos Warrior champion, because I want Ungrim to be able to hit the unit, so he can kill more of them in one go. So, what does the Anvil do this turn? Well, the Anvil's magic missile actually kills 2 Dragon Ogres, which is obscenely good. So it's 2d6 strength 4 hits -2 on the save. But apparently, Dragon Ogres are supposed to get some kind of save against magic. But, look at that, amazing. So I think it got about 7 or 8 wounds through, and the Dragon Ogres didn't make their saves to save their lives, literally, so there's only 1 left. Which is kind of bad, because any unit is a potential point source as long as you kill them. If you get them down to 1 model out of 3, if they hide for the rest of the game, you score nothing for them. So, it takes them out of the game, but they will have to hide. But I'm not going to score anything for them because I don't really have anything to chase a single Dragon Ogre around the table with. The pony cart attempts a charge as well, and that was into the Dragon Ogres as well, before I decided to fire the anvil at them, because if I could have hit them with the pony cart, then that would have been one thing, because the pony cart is actually pretty tough. It's toughness 5 and it's got 3 wounds, so it failed its charge though. The hammerers made theirs into the Chaos Warriors, and they gobble them all up. So the Chaos Warriors are dead, the hammerers overrun, and they overrun beyond the threat of this unit of Chaos Warriors. Dragon Ogre is still there, but it would be in the front by the look of things. And the Demon Prince obviously could charge into the back of my unit, but I would not be concerned about that at all, because again, Ungrim can fight his way through the ranks into the fighting rank and swing against the Demon Prince, which the Demon Prince would not want. Okay, so killed the unit, but lost 2 gyrocopters to magic, and I've got 1 auto dispel remaining, I think. Turn 2 for the Forces of Chaos. Oh yeah, also, I remembered actually I could reform, because I think I ran down the enemy unit who fled because they were heavily outnumbered and lost almost the entire unit, and passed the leadership test and was able to do a reform. So I remembered about that, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to turn my back on a Dragon Ogre, because that Dragon Ogre does not want to fight me. That thing's probably going to hide, so I'd rather face the things that I'm more likely to be able to catch and kill by the end of the game that maybe aren't going to run away. So, now turn 2. Dragon Ogre moves up behind the hammerers, but importantly does not charge them. He's just sitting there to prevent me doing any kind of reform shenanigans or rotating without clipping him. And one of the sorcerers is down there as well. The Demon Prince. So, the Demon Prince tries to cast, what's it called? Demonic speed or urgency or something like that, to try and let it move again. And he rolled a double 1, and then rolled a 10 on the miscast table and shut down the entire magic phase. Wow, wow, wow. So we've got 4 wizards, none of whom can cast any spells in the shooting phase because the Demon Prince double wand trying to move himself again on a whim. So that is quite hilarious, I think you'll agree. So the first magic phase shut down by all my auto dispels, second one shut down by the Demon Prince. And he does manage to get the spell off though, because the spell works, you just can't do any more. So he ends up over here staring down my lines. And I'm quite happy about this actually, because the Doomseeker, I was thinking actually he's kind of trapped and no one's coming forwards. But now there's a demon in town, so the Doomseeker is going to potentially be able to charge him next turn. And even if I don't reach, I'll get out there and potentially ready to die anyway. Yeah, because if the Doomseeker ends up here, and you're the Demon Prince, and you want to keep casting spells, you're going to want to stay in this general area, or maybe you'd charge the Anvil, possibly, if you want to get the points for that, but then the Doomseeker could counter into you. Ollie says that's why you don't bring 4 wizards. Well, I think Rob was definitely feeling that way at this point in the game. So, on to my turn 3. The Doomseeker makes the long charge. With the extra D3 he has in his charge distance, he is not slow when it comes to charging. Makes it into the Demon Prince. The Pony Cart attempted to charge again into the Dragon Ogre, but failed again. And the Hammerers... Okay, so the Hammerers charged into this unit of Chaos Warriors here. Splattered into them. Beat them in combat. They fled. And then... with the overrun, I ran straight into the Hell Cannon. And yeah, there you go. Great. I think I'm not sure whether I killed them all outright or whether I pursued and ran them down, but they're all dead anyway. And now we're into the Hell Cannon, which is great because it means magic missiles are not going to be targeting my hammerers this turn. Which is obviously really good. So when you're up against loads of wizards that have magic missiles, you generally want to be locked in combat. But there are downsides to being locked in combat as well. There are certain spells you can't cast on your own units when they're in combat. And depending whose turn is next as well. Depends how open you want to be. You can see that I've been going extra wide every time I do any kind of move with the hammerers. So eventually they just get ridiculous. Turn 3 for the Forces of Chaos. So the Dragon Ogre turns around to face the pony cart. The wizards are just hiding and looking for a good spot to magic missile against the pony cart. And the Demon Prince and the Doomseeker are still fighting because the Demon Prince only did 1 wound to me last turn. This Demon Prince, by the way, he's got multiple saves, so that's why the Doomseeker hasn't wounded him. You can see the Anvil took some wounds though from the Demon. What was it from the Demon Prince? It might have been the Hell Cannon landed on it actually and did a couple of wounds. And one of the wizards does damage to the pony cart with magic missiles. Jankmaster says ridiculous, yes. Yes, Linehammer is quite ridiculous, and I would very much like for them to get rid of it, but they would have to rewrite quite a lot of the rules to make that viable, because there are certain units, the only reason they're at all viable is because you can put them in a long line, and if you couldn't, then certain other units that are maybe already too good would be even better. And it would become even more of the hero hammer, I think. So get rid of the lines, but give some benefit to having a small, compact block of troops rather than a ridiculously wide line of troops. Got Lee in the chat. A great weekend, thank you for the game. Hello, welcome. So, let's have a look where these wizards are. So these two can't do much from there, but they're preserving their points. There's a vortex. It's the Pillar of Fire. Then we've got a second one, so 2 Pillar of Fire down from these 2 sorcerers. And the Demon Prince kills the Doomseeker, overruns, but doesn't quite reach the ranges yet. Now turn 4 for me, so I've got 1 turn to do something about this Demon Prince. Okay, so this is an interesting situation. The Hammerers defeated the Hell Cannon in combat but did not destroy it. The Hell Cannon failed its leadership and fled. The Hammerers then overran in this direction. And let's have a look. So these guys, the Hell Cannon runs over here, away from the centre. This is really weird. So the Hell Cannon ends up about there. But the important thing is that it's beyond the side of this unit here. If I draw a line up there, the Hell Cannon pokes out a bit to the right. So, when the Hammerers pursue, they touch the Chaos Warriors first, because they have to spin round to face the direction the Hell Cannon's fleeing. They then make contact with the Warriors, and then swing to close on the Chaos Warriors, at which point they touch the Hell Cannon. Because obviously a unit this wide, when it does its wild swings to fully make contact, it covers a huge amount of the table. So it actually makes contact with the unit that it failed to catch by pursuing. So, opened the rulebook at this point, and there were 2 seemingly contradictory rules right next to each other. One of them is that the unit fleeing, I do not roll high enough to catch it. And therefore, the unit is not caught, and is therefore not killed. That's stated explicitly in the rules. And then the next paragraph says that if a fleeing unit is contacted for some reason by the enemy, it is killed. So, we had no idea how we were supposed to handle that situation. It doesn't seem to be very clear to me, so we decided the thing that makes logical sense is that instead of closing and touching the Hell Cannon, then we'll let the Chaos Warriors close to me instead, because otherwise it's swinging around like a foot on the table to touch the Hell Cannon to then destroy it. At which point would they then stop moving? Because they wouldn't have fully closed onto the Chaos Warriors then either. Because they would have been like at this sort of an angle and the Chaos Warriors were at 90 degrees, so the There would have been a little V angle there, so they wouldn't have been fully maximised against them. But if you touch a fleeing unit and run them down, you have to stop right there. So it's a very weird rules interaction. And someone let me know if you've come up with this issue in your games, let me know what your resolution was, because it's very strange. Should the hammerers have continued swinging round, touched and killed the hell cannon and then stopped? Should they have gone and done that and then the Chaos Warriors completed the rest of the swing to close it? Should I have continued to close after touching the hell cannon? Should I have stopped before touching the hell cannon, even though I hadn't fully aligned yet? So, yes, that's a bit of a headache situation, and that's going to be a good one for the comments as well if no one can get it during the live broadcast. Someone let me know. So we decided the hell cannon's alive for now, and that's what we're going to do. It just seems to make logical sense. It would be strange if the rules explicitly say the hell cannon is not mown down, and then, because of the weird shape of the unit and the swing, it would then be mown down. Sounds wrong to us. So this is what we're going with. Down here, okay, so now it's full on turn 4. So the Thunderers turn round so that they can shoot the Demon Prince and not get flank charged. The Warriors face him as well. And the Rangers, I think I put them into skirmish mode. No, I don't. I don't think I do, actually. I think I just leave them, and then Rob was eating some cheese, so I took a picture of it. Yeah, I was thinking about putting them in skirmish mode until I remembered the ruling that if the Demon Prince charged into the flank of them, any that can't reach their position in the back of the unit would just auto-die, so I did not put them in skirmish mode. Let's see. Yankmaster says, there's something that maximises the movement so the line may not swing that crazily. Let's go back and have a look. So, when you make contact with the enemy, at that point, the big swing to line you up doesn't cause you to not reach the point you're going for. Like, that's not counted as the full bit of your movement. That's it's not exactly free, but it can't cause you to fail the charge, is how I remember reading it. So the big swing is kind of free at times, but also not free, which is the case in a lot of Games Workshop's rules writing. Sometimes something is the case, sometimes it isn't, even though it feels like it should always be the same. So, cheese. The pony cart and the dragon ogre are going to have some fun there. So, the hammerers kill the warriors of chaos there, and then overrun, and finally they do make contact with the hell cannon anyway, who was fleeing, so obviously it dies. Jankmaster says you wouldn't have failed the charge. Yes, that's correct. They wouldn't have failed the charge. Ollie says, aren't war machines destroyed when they flee? Well, the hell cannon isn't a normal war machine. It's also a monster, I think. So it does have war machine elements to it, but it can fight as well. So I think it can just flee. It's not destroyed because it's kind of a monster with handlers. So Jankmaster says possibly a disordered charge. I don't know. Very weird. Yeah, a lot of war machines do just get destroyed if they full on flee, but I don't think the hell cannon is one of them because it's a monster with handlers rather than a war machine with crew. Gilthar says they can flee. They can flee, but if they break in combat, which is what happened to the hell cannon. So a traditional war machine would have been killed by that. So we've mopped up a couple of Chaos Warrior units and the hell cannon. So let's see whether the Warriors of Chaos can turn the tide by the end of the game and win some points back. So, the Pillars of Fire move over the Hammerers. Small amount of casualties caused. These Chaos Warriors are running away into the woods. The Demon Prince, I think, attacks the... No, he doesn't even attack the Rangers, actually. He stays in a position where I can't charge him, and then he's going to keep doing spells. And then he flaps over here as well, and puts the Pillar of Fire right there. So the Pillar of Fire in this position is actually quite scary because it can go across like 4 of my units and it can hurt all of them. I think Pillar of Fire, the reason it seems overpowered is because you can choose which direction it goes in. And I wouldn't mind that staying if, for example, it was limited to if it crosses any units or the footprint of any units, it picks one of those units that it does the damage to. And I don't think it would feel overpowered then, even if you were spamming it. But as it is, if you were able to surround this block of stuff with 4 pillars of fire, then every single unit is going to be hit 4 times each turn, and the wizards can retreat out of range, and it just keeps doing it. Another way would be if you have a vortex, it has to remain within a certain distance of the wizard, perhaps, for it to remain active. There isn't really a spell upkeep mechanic in the old world. So we've got the Dragon Ogre into the pony cart, who's been taking spell damage for a while, and not much is accomplished there. So into my turn, the vortex moves across my line at the back, kills the Anvil of Doom in one go. Well, it had already been wounded, to be fair, and takes a couple of models off the other units. Then the other 2 move through the hammerers and do a bit more damage. So really it's just, can I survive against the Pillars of Fire now and retain my lead, or am I going to lose multiple units? So the pony cart dies at the hands of the Dragon Ogre. And into turn 5 for Chaos. Because you can see I've spread out my units here trying to get away from the pillars, and the hammerers as well doing the same thing. So turn 5 for Chaos. The Pillars of Fire try to catch up with the hammerers, but they don't quite make it this turn. And the other pillar moves through these 2 units because I carelessly didn't leave a big enough gap between them so it couldn't land, so it was able to go through both. And kills a few more models. The Demon Prince lands in the middle of all my units as well, so he can't be charged. We've got Matisse, who loves my dwarf army. Hello, thank you. The Dragon Ogre's running off to hide now, which is what I expected him to do a while ago, but he obviously saw that pony cart as an easy meal. So some of the Rangers are magic missiled off from the Demon Prince. And my turn 6. So you can see that there's a bit of space caused between these 2 units now from the casualties, so the Vortex has to land between them and does a bit more damage. We're down to 2 Thunderers now. Nuke says, Pillar of Fire is now my second scariest spell, the first being the Mirage, so you can't charge spell. Yes, that is also horrible. Anything that stops you doing a thing is bad. So anything that shuts down what you want to do. So I'm thinking, what else does that? There's the... Is it the Infernal Puppet that means you have to cast on 3 dice and pick the lowest? Is that the one? Anything that stops you doing what you want to do is kind of more annoying than things that damage you, I would say. Shutting down your cool stuff is not cool. So, in my turn 6, the Hammerers, they're taking more Vortexes, but they're surviving, or Vortices. And that's it. I'm not going to do anything else. No point trying to attack the Demon Prince, just spreading out so not everyone gets vortexed. And Chaos turn 6, they have another go. The Vortex spells do some more damage. They do finish off the Thunderers this time. And that's how the game's going to end, with the Demon Prince staring down the back of the Rangers. So, what was the final result? Who's left? My massive Hammerer block is still alive, still not giving away any points with all the heroes in it. That's over 1,000 points. The Doomseeker got killed, so that doesn't count for anything. I lost the 2 Gyrocopters, the Pony Cart, the Anvil, the Thunderers. And I think that's it. Chaos lost the Hell Cannon, 2 units of Chaos Warriors, and I think that's the lot, because the Dragon Ogres are still above 25%. So neither of us have killed that much points-wise, but when it's tallied up, we find out that the Dwarves have killed just about enough to sneak a win by about 35 points, because you need 100 points to make it a win, and after that, every 200 points increases the threshold, so you can potentially get up to a 20-0. So with it only being a tiny win, it was about 130-ish points. So the Dwarves win 11-9 against the vile, disgusting Warriors of Chaos. So a good start for the Dwarves, a good start for the Hammerer blob being yeeted, as the kids say, across the table, turn 1, right in front of the enemy. Anyone else with static infantry is going to struggle if the Anvil's conveyance spell goes off. On average, it should do, because I need a 7 on the dice to cast it, and if I'm going first, then the enemy won't be in range, probably, to dispel the anvil, unless they have some artificial increase to their dispel range. So, on to game 2. Now, this game was not supposed to be Mountain Pass, but my opponent and I both heard Mountain Pass, because there was a roll to see whether it was Mountain Pass or the one where you hold the building in the middle. I can't even remember what that one's called now. Is it Command and Control, that one? There was a roll to see which one was going to be in this round, and for some reason we both heard Mountain Pass, and we agreed amongst ourselves that it was Mountain Pass, even though nobody else in the event was playing Mountain Pass this round. It used to be called Watchtower, yes. Let's see, Junkmaster's final result for me is that we are deep enough into this new edition that tournaments have already uncovered the cheese. Yes, there is definitely some cheese in this game to be uncovered, and it has been uncovered now. So certain things that maybe we thought were going to be broken at the start definitely aren't. Linehammer certainly is not broken. You don't see tournament-winning armies full of just really long lines of units. That's not a thing you see much at all. A lot of the very strong armies don't even necessarily have big units of anything. Some of them are quite hero-heavy and small elite units. You do see some big units. You can have large units in, for example, Vampire Counts or Tomb Kings. You could have big units of rubbish infantry as your core, and then the other stuff is what's really doing the damage sometimes. So, Mountain Pass. And it's against the Warriors of Chaos again. But there is a big difference with this list, and I believe this is going to be more of a struggle going in, and the Hammerers might be limited in how much fighting they get to do in this game. So, with it being Mountain Pass, you cannot run off the edge of the table and die. You can't be scared off the edge of the table and die. Obviously, if you run into the edge of the table and then someone's pursuing you, there's a high chance you'll be caught because the table's edge is blocking you. But you can't just be nudged back off the table edge with, for example, fall back in good order. You can, however, on the short edges. So it's a risk me deploying my rangers all the way over there. But I'll explain the thinking in a moment. Let's see, Jankmaster says just single unit at the centre of the table, yeeting, and window washering units as they sweep the board. That is the plan. So, what is in this list? Let's go and have a look here. So, I'm on the Best Coast pairings here, which is what was used for the event. Which I do prefer Millarchy, actually, but that hasn't adopted Old World yet. It's in use for Age of Sigmar at the moment. So, let's have a look at round 2. And my opponent's list. Pulling it up now. So, Warriors of Chaos. There is a Sorcerer Lord, who is, I think it's this one here, on the end of the Chaos Knights. So, level 4, Mark of Slaanesh, Demonic Mount, Infernal Puppet, which isn't going to affect this game, Giant Blade, and Demonology. Then there's a Demon Prince, which is very similar to the Demon Prince from the previous game. 461 points worth of Demon Prince, level 4, Ogre Blade, Ruby Ring of Ruin, Battle Magic, who is in the centre there, and can also fly. In the core, there are 6 Forsaken, there are 10 Marauder Horsemen, 10 Marauder Horsemen again, and 6 more Forsaken, who are, let me go back to the wide shots, I think they're up there somewhere. We'll get a better picture of them in a minute, I'm sure. Then, what else have we got? We've got 3 individual Dragon Ogres, which are these things here. So 1 there, 1 there, and 1 there. And 5 Chosen Chaos Knights, with Mark of Slaanesh, Full Command, Lances, and there's a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth as well, which is out on the flank somewhere. So there he is, represented by Kragnos, and looks pretty good as a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, I think, because there's the Forsaken and there's the other Dragon Ogre. So, what is my plan and why are the Rangers in such a risky position? Because that's the only place they could be made to run off the table. My thinking is, the enemy, when they see the Hammerers coming forward, might not want to fight me. So they might start backing up, and I'm going to remove that option by putting the Rangers here. And if anyone wants to turn around and fight the Rangers, I don't think one of these units would get the job done. The Demon Prince probably wouldn't want to fight them, but that would be a big risk because that's a lot of great weapons hitting him. So, and that's 461 points you don't want to throw away there. So you're much better off throwing spells at them or throwing multiple units into them. If you throw multiple units into them, that means you're miles away from the enemy, and they're Chaos Warriors. They probably want to fight, but they don't want to fight the Hammerers. They want to fight everything else. So, on that flank I've got the Doom Seeker, so he can get himself killed against one of the Dragon Ogres, maybe over there. Thunderers on the hill, Gyrocopter and the cart supporting the Hammerers, same for the other Gyrocopter. Anvil all the way out here on its own, so that I don't want my more vulnerable units at the back to get swept across one way or the other. So they're well spread out on both sides here, with the Warriors guarding the Thunderers. The Anvil's quite expensive, all the way out there on its own. So if it gets killed, it's not going to lead to a sweep of my entire army, is my thinking. And its Magic Missile is pretty good against Knights, with its AP2. So, first turn, the Hammerers make their first move. However, the Anvil fails to convey them by failing to roll a 7, but I did get the super armor buff on them. And this isn't really a problem. The reason that the Runesmith is in the front rank in the first round is in case this happens and I get stuck there without the extra move from the Anvil, if that fails to go off, then you've still got the 3 auto dispels in the front rank. It doesn't matter that they're not unbreakable because they're stubborn, which is almost as good as unbreakable in the first round. So if anyone charges them, then from the second round on, because I'll be able to go wider if I fall back anyway, so then I'd be able to move the characters into the front, and at that point they become unbreakable because Ungrim's back in the front rank. So I'm not too concerned about this setup here. I don't have all my anti-charge buffs because the Standard Bearer is back and not in the front rank either. But again, it depends what units you're facing down. Sometimes that's not an issue. So the Anvil kills a... Does it actually kill a Chaos Knight? It may well kill one. The Rangers start shooting and kill some of the Marauder Horsemen. And they flee. But because they're not below 50%, they only really fall back in good order. So they fall back towards my army, really, which is odd. Gyrocopter and Doomseeker moving up. Pony Cart moving up to support the Hammerers. And that's how we're looking. So, will anyone want to charge into the front of the Hammerers while they're less than optimal for combat conditions? Because Ungrim would be able to fight from wherever he is, like the second rank, into the front rank to fight. I think you can do that. Can you do that to displace a command model? I assume so. Or you could displace the Runesmith, because once you're in combat, can you do that? Or do you have to displace rank and file rather than command models and characters? It'll be interesting to know. This will be less of an issue if I run a bigger unit of Hammerers at some point, because you can start off the game wider, so you can have more of your characters in the front rank at the start. It's only this weird situation because they have to go so narrow for the marching column early on. Let's see. Ollie says, these games are existing. I assume you mean exciting there. Maybe it auto-corrected for you. The Anvil adds so much possibilities to your list. Jankmaster, happy to have caught you live. Yes. So it does make the games very interesting, and it's an exciting opening to the game, because if these guys then got to move another 8 inches right in front, some of this stuff is going to struggle to get away. The reason that these Marauder Horsemen have come forward is because they fled away from the Rangers, which I'm quite happy about, because I've done some good damage to them. So, into turn 1 for Chaos. So, Demonic Vigour is cast upon the Chaos Knights by the Sorcerer Lord, and that gives them +1... trying to read upside down, but it's various stats, initiative, toughness, and movement. So, they move up around the Anvil, as do the Marauder Horsemen. The Forsaken do not want to fight the Hammerers, apparently. They run away. And what's this? Everyone apart from 2 Dragon Ogres running away from the Hammerers? I thought this was supposed to be chaos. Well, they are chaos, but they've also got a little bit of wisdom to them, because you would have to be nuts to hit the Hammerers, even this wide, because they're not going to stay that wide for long. However, here's something. If you catch a drilled unit being narrow, and you want to keep them that way, then you can move units and park next to them, so that they can't expand the ranks when they make a charge, or make any other kind of move. So you can really get them stuck in marching column. Now, I don't know whether you could do that in this situation, because technically I can still go on either side, because you have to be an inch away from me. So that would be enough to take me out of marching column. So maybe in this instance, maybe I could do it. But there are situations where you want to get alongside these drilled units so they can't expand to their full potential before they charge, or just in general you don't want them expanding. So that's something to consider. So for example, these Forsaken, maybe instead of running off this way, maybe they could have gone here, and that would have prevented the Hammerers from expanding. I would have been stuck in this little brick. On the other hand, while they're in a brick, they can potentially just turn each model to face this way, and then the command kind of teleport to this end. So it kind of makes them more manoeuvrable while they're like this, with a reform. So, into my turn 2, and a gyrocopter charges into the Sorcerer Lord, because I thought, you know what, that's a sorcerer. I could kill him maybe with impact hits. He's not going to have as good a save as the rest of the knights, probably. But unfortunately, that does not work at all, and Chaos Sorcerers are not to be trifled with. The gyrocopter gets killed. So that's sad. The Rangers shoot down one of the Dragon Ogres in front of them, which is good. The Doom Seeker and the gyrocopter and the pony cart. So let's have a look. Let's go here. So this unit was charged by the pony cart, the gyrocopter, and the Doom Seeker, this unit of Marauder Cavalry. And they make total mincemeat of them. The Doom Seeker is really good when he gets to fight. It's D3 plus 1 impact hits and 2d3 attacks. And he is strength 5 and weapon skill 5 as well. So he's pretty tasty, actually, the Doom Seeker. He's got an AP of 1. And if he dies, he's got one final death blow as well. So we've killed quite a lot of models already, mostly Marauder Horsemen. But it's going alright. The Anvil kills more of this unit of Marauder Horses, who run away in the opposite direction this time. And they're now running towards Hammerers despite being petrified. And they only fall back in good order again as well, because they're not below 50% yet. But they keep panicking and moving back and forth between my units as they're fleeing. So that has presented me with them right in front, obviously, with the Hammerers. At this point, I've decided to take a nice picture of the Hammerers with the full command, because you can see I've gone wider here with them and turned to face the enemy. So you've got the Runesmith and the BSB on this side, and you've got Ungrim over there. And he is a very imposing miniature. This might be one of my favourite all-time dwarf miniatures, which is really controversial to say because it's so modern. But it is just ridiculously good. If you've not bought this, I would heartily recommend anyone painting this thing, because it is a delight. Giovanni loves Ungrim with the Hammerers. Great combo. It sure is. Assuming it gets to fight. So, turn 2 for Chaos. Chaos Knights into the Anvil. None of them die from the difficult terrain, unfortunately. We've got Forsaken into the Doom Seeker. And we've got Dragon Ogre attempting to charge the Gyrocopter, who flees. And then the Pony Cart is waiting as backup there to charge in later. These Marauder Horsemen stay where they are. They don't try and get out of the way. I'm sure they could have probably, but there may be a reason for them staying there. These Forsaken are running away because they don't want to fight the Hammerers, and the Demon Prince is in a similar boat, doesn't want to fight them. So the Demon Prince runs away and starts trying to cast spells at the Rangers. So let's see, here is a Pillar of Fire, which is going to spend the rest of the game dancing back and forth over the Rangers probably, and a couple of them have died from the magic missiles from the Demon Prince. So it's quite a scattered battle now. We've got fighting going on all over the place. The Doomseeker beats the Forsaken in combat. They don't do anything to him. He kills one of them, follows up, and actually they fall back in good order and he pursues. So next turn he's going to get his impact hits. So that's really good. So obviously he wants to die, but you want to kill stuff with him first to get your money's worth. And the Anvil takes a wound, gives ground, and it actually kills a Chaos Knight, which is great, and holds them up for a turn. So into my turn 3. So what am I going to do? The Hammerers are going to charge this unit of cavalry, obviously. The Pony Cart's probably going to charge the Dragon Ogre. And the Rangers have got to decide what to do. They may well just try and shoot at the Demon Prince. So, the vortex moves over them again. And now it's my turn for real. So the Demon Prince starts shooting him, don't do too much. You can see over here the gyrocopter is still fleeing. The pony cart and the Dragon Ogre going at it. The Doomseeker has killed another Forsaken. The Hammerers into the cavalry. And the Hammerers obviously killed the cavalry, and they decided at this point we're going to turn around and face this way. Because if you look at this side of the table, the Anvil's going to die. The Forsaken are actually quite fast. These Knights are obviously fast, with a Sorcerer. So they're just going to go and hide, and the Hammerers won't be able to catch them. Whereas the other side of the table, there's all these things. There's the Dragon Ogre, the Shaggoth, another Dragon Ogre. They might get bogged down in combat against some of this stuff. So that would give the Hammerers more time to get there. And there's no point chasing after the Demon Prince because he can just fly away, so they'd be going towards nothing. On the other hand, maybe I could have turned them that way so they could go after the Demon Prince to scare him away from the Rangers, which could be viable. So the Anvil dies this turn, and the Knights fail to restrain, and they just overrun straight towards this brewery. And you can see I've got 2 auto dispels remaining there on the Runesmith, so not had to use too many of those yet. Turn 3 for the vile, disgusting Forces of Chaos. The Pillar of Fire kills another couple of Rangers. The Dragon Ogre and the Pony Cart getting into it. The Shaggoth and the Dragon Ogre storm into the Dwarf Warriors. And the Forsaken... And so the Forsaken lose in combat again to the Doomseeker. The Knights are hiding behind this building. Pony Cart and the Dragon Ogre are still fighting. And the Warriors fall back in good order. So, they do have shield walls, so I could have chosen to give ground. However, I decided, you know what, the Thunderers are less points than the Warriors, so I would rather that they have to spend a turn fighting the Thunderers instead, because if the Warriors stay alive, that's more points in my favour. So I allow them to fall back in good order rather than using shield wall. And in the centre, potentially, Hammerers have got to charge in on a Dragon Ogre now. So the Doomseeker into the Forsaken, kills another one. And then, oh, we're into the next turn already here. So in the next round of combat, the Thunderers lost, and they fell back in good order, and then these two went into the Warriors again. But I do still have a challenge in there who could challenge the Shaggoth to single combat to keep them alive. Because even if you get whooped and you lose even on the overkill, which you can get up to 5, they'll still lose by a lot. But as long as you keep your unit strength more than half of the enemies, then you've got a decent chance of sticking around. And even if they don't, they'll be running away through the Thunderers, who are going to be there to absorb the next charge. So, the Rangers move away from the Pillar of Fire as fast as they can, which is 6 inches, which means it won't be able to catch them next turn. The Doomseeker and the Forsaken are still fighting. The worst case scenario for me here is if neither of them die, because then my opponent keeps the points for that unit and also scores 50 for the Doomseeker not dying. So a stalemate does not benefit me over there. You can see the Hammerers killed off the Dragon Ogre that was fighting the Pony Cart, as they should. And now they're facing this way, ready to go and chase down the Dragon Ogre and the Shaggoth. So the Forsaken and the Chaos Knights are still hiding, they're not going to come out. And Demon Prince moves away, magic missiles at the Rangers. And the Warriors lose in combat again to the Dragon Ogres. And again, they pursue into the Thunderers. So we're just going to keep tagging in and out of combat until we reach the edge of the table. So this corpse pile is going to have to be moved in a minute if the combat keeps going this way. Also, it's not great for me if the combat does keep moving, because the Hammerers want to be in here fighting and they're quite far away. You can see there were 3 overkill on top of the champion being killed in the challenge as well, which led to the enemy winning. And you can see on this combat resolution counter that it was by 2 points. So, the Forsaken finally killed the Doomseeker, so he's done a good job in this game. And obviously he's not giving up any victory points. Would have been nice if his death blow had finished off the unit, but alas. Turn 5 for me. So the Rangers are definitely getting whittled down by this Pillar of Fire, and there's not a lot I can do about it right now. The Gyrocopter rear-charges the Dragon Ogre to join in and try and save the Thunderers. And they take loads of damage. The champion does make a challenge this turn. So my thinking with the challenges is on the turn that you think your unit strength might be about to go down to below half, that's the point you definitely need to make a challenge, if not sooner. Because you need to keep the numbers in the unit up, even if you're losing combat by more. The Gyrocopter flees, the Thunderers flee, so they overrun again into the Warriors again this time. And the Hammerers are just trying to get in the action. The Pony Cart is chasing after the two Forsaken and goes into the woods and is wounded at this point. More Chaos hiding in the corner. Turn 5 for Chaos. The Vortex kills all but 2 of the Bugman's Rangers, but they're hanging in there for now. And then they die. So Magic Missile from the Demon Prince. He was just there blasting them the whole game. And he didn't really do anything else. So obviously he doesn't die, so it's a good use of his points in that respect. But he's a 400 and something point unit and they are 200 and something. So you would ideally want to be dealing with the Rangers for the entire game with something cheaper, I think. But it was a decent job for him because he was safe. Jankmaster says Vortex is officially dumb. I think Pillar of Fire is dumb the way that works. I think they should change it. I think they should give you either it should move randomly, or you should have to stay in range of the Vortex with your Wizard, or it should only affect one unit that it passes across, or it should be able to stop on units so it doesn't bounce across multiples of them. So Giovanni considers that a win for me, that the Rangers tied up the Demon Prince for the entire game. I'm not too inclined to disagree with that. The Rangers did some decent shooting first and then took the Demon Prince out of the game, so I think I can live with that. The Pony Cart takes a dangerous terrain test on the charge and loses a wound. You can see that I'm slowly running out of Dwarf Warriors and Thunderers there. And actually the Pony Cart, yeah, there it is. It's in combat now with 1 wound left. Turn 6 for Chaos. The Warriors are dead. The Thunderers will be dead soon, unfortunately. But I positioned them in such a way so that the overrun from the Dragon Ogre would hit them and the Shaggoth would not. So they're more likely to survive against just a Dragon Ogre. Pony Cart into the Forsaken. Fail the dangerous terrain test, 1 wound remaining, the drama intensifies. The Hammerers keep chasing down units they're never going to catch, and the Thunderers are killed. Then, lots of Chaos stuff still hiding. The Hammerers not really getting into combat again. And the Pony Cart dies at the hands of the Forsaken. So I've got my massive expensive unit that's over 1,000 points, barely touched. And it killed a couple of things, but not much. Did get to do some fighting. But the expensive enemy units decided they weren't really going to participate in the game, which is a valid strategy because the alternative was fighting this 1,000 point block of Hammerers and Deadly Heroes. So hiding was definitely a good choice for the Chaos Warriors down there, because what are 4 Chaos Warriors and a Sorcerer Lord going to do charging into those Hammerers? They're just going to get totally whooped. So there's no incentive to do that whatsoever. So you might as well hide. Same for the Forsaken. The Demon Prince, you don't want to tangle with them either. So the final result was actually pretty close still, and I'll just pull that up on the app now. Gemmel says those Hammerers must be knackered. They must be. I assume when the anvil does the conveyance on them, it reinvigorates their muscles, because otherwise they would be very tired stomping around all game. So let me pull up the result there. So it turned into a 12-8 win for the Warriors of Chaos, which is not too bad, because when I looked at the army list, I thought there's a lot of speed here. I don't know if my Hammerers yeeting across the table are going to be able to pin that down. So the fact that it was very close at the end, I did manage to kill some stuff. I think my opponent could have actually been even more elusive, but did choose to put some things into range to fight. I think everything could have just scattered and run off to the sides, and it would have taken a long time for the Hammerers to catch up with anybody. So there we go. Small loss for the Dwarves in round 2 after a small win in round 1. Yankmaster says the game was lost off of the failed conveyance. Potentially, because it would have been difficult for some of those units to get out of the way if the Hammerers were like an inch away from them in turn 1. That would have been tricky. And yes, it does go into the book. I'm not sure what should go into the book though. The Chaos Warriors or the anvil, striking the rune incorrectly, trying to strike the rune and just striking his thumb instead. Into the next round. So, pulling up round 3. And it's the first of 2 games against Brettonians. So, cracking open the Brettonian list from this game. Now, as soon as the deployment is going on here, and I see that the expensive units are out on the flanks, I'm concerned. So I'll go through the list. There is a Duke on a Royal Pegasus with a lance, and Virtue of Knightly Temper, so has lots of good saves on that Duke. Lady Elise Duchard, or as the people of Yorkshire say, Lady Dutchard. So she is a level 3 spellcaster, but she, I think, dispels on a +4. Have I got that the right way round? Then the Green Knight, who obviously doesn't start on the table but can appear from terrain, and that's going to be a slight issue for my army because I only have magical attacks in the big blob of hammerers. No one else has magical attacks, which at this stage I don't know because I thought maybe the anvil would have magical attacks, but it does not. I do have magic missiles that could kill it though if it gets caught out in the open. The core, there are 10 mounted knights of the realm, which are up there in lance formation. They have the full command, and they have the banner of honourable warfare. 20 peasant bowmen, which are on the hill. 25 men-at-arms with full command down there, which are cheap. So that's 224 points, those 2 peasant units. Special, there are 7 Pegasus Knights, which is an expensive unit, 369 points with the war banner, and a musician and a standard bearer up there. And there is a Trebuchet, which is right here for some long-range firepower. So, what am I thinking about this game? Well, I immediately think, if I yeet the hammerers across the table, I kill 2 peasant units and maybe a Trebuchet. So I kill 300 points. While that's going on, the rest of my army gets totally annihilated by Pegasus Knights. I don't think I have a counter to them at all, unless I corner camp. And if I corner camp, what's going to happen? The Trebuchet is going to shoot at me for the whole game, and maybe some spells will get cast at me, and then the wizards will run away. So, and what kind of corner camping could I do anyway? Let's see. So I could put everything just crammed into the corner, the rangers maybe in front with their crossbows in a big diagonal line, the hammerers right up behind them in a diagonal line so that they can't bounce back, for example, with give ground. If they fall back in good order, of course, then they would just die because they'd bounce through my entire army. But if they die, the thing that came in to kill them, the hammerers could then charge. So that's a potential corner strategy, but I don't think it would work because the enemy has more ranged options than I do. The bows fire at longer range than my handguns. The rangers, if I deploy them out anywhere, they just get killed by Pegasus Knights and the Duke because they would multi-charge all of them together, and I think they would wipe out enough rangers in the front rank that my strike back wouldn't be devastating. It's happened against Brettonians before. With the really long line of rangers, they get hit by multiple units at once and too many of them die. So, if I move into the middle, kill those units, then the hammerers are stuck there. The hammerers won't die, but everything else will. So I'll be down 900 and something points because everything else will die, and the enemy will be down 300 points, so it'll be a medium loss. So I decide instead I'm not going to even bother trying to attack the peasant units. I'm going to try and defend what I've got back here. The Rangers and the Doomseeker are going to try and deal with the Knights of the Realm. The Hammerers are going to try and support the Thunderers, the Warriors and the Anvil on this side with the pony cart. So I'm not going to do the yeet across the table this time because there's nothing worth doing. I could have deployed the Hammerers out here to counteract Knights of the Realm, but if I do that, what's to stop the Knights of the Realm just turning that way and running off this way across the table and leaving the Hammerers nowhere? While again, the Pegasus Knights just kill the rest of my army. So, that's the thinking behind it. Also, I've not put myself too close to the table edge because if I get charged in the front, I don't want to accidentally give ground or fall back in good order off the table edge. Ironbreaker says the Hell Cannon is unbreakable. Well, that's not very good play from the honest wargamer there, is it, in round 1? So we'll have to let him know about that. I think I asked him if it was unbreakable, actually, because I just assumed that it would be, because it's just a big demon machine. So I would have thought it would be unbreakable or stubborn. But he said it wasn't, so he must have just missed that rule in there. So, Knights of the Realm out here. And is there a BSB as well? Oh yeah, I didn't touch on the BSB. There's a Paladin with the Battle Standard Bearer, which is in the unit of Knights of the Realms. So, here we go. We've got Peasants, we've got Knights, we've got Dwarves. The Gyrocopter on the left flank immediately makes its Vanguard move to run away, because I don't just want to get killed by Pegasus Knights turn 1. So I just don't want to engage them at all, and just run back here and hide, and then maybe jump out and block charges later. So, turn 1, the Brettonians choose to pray, so I'm going to go first and they get their ward saves. Doomseeker straight out, the Rangers do some shooting, kill a couple of Knights of the Realm, which is good. And everything else doesn't do much. Just waiting for the enemy. Turn 1 for the Brettonians. The lady's something, the lady's gift is put onto the Duke. The Green Knight emerges, and emerges from the woods and charges at the pony cart, who flees and then redirects the charge into the hammerers, which I'm cool with, because Ungrim can either issue a challenge, or Ungrim could just fight his way through the ranks and fight from here. So we're going to have Ungrim versus the Green Knight. However, because it's come into the flank, because it's charging from about here, I don't get any of my anti-charge stuff. So, we can look forward to Ungrim versus the Green Knight in a moment. Then the Duke moves up with the Pegasus Knights here into a range to be threatening. So the Gyrocopter in my next turn is going to have to try and block somebody there. Ungrim and the Green Knight are now getting ready to battle. Nukeman Hammerers are also magical weapons. They certainly are. Hammerers are magical weapons, and I don't think I put runes on any of my other heroes' weapons, so they wouldn't be magical, but the Hammerers would. But if there was no challenge going on, the Green Knight would just kill 2 Hammerers, and then I don't think I would be able to strike because the fighting rank would be wiped out. So Ungrim could barge his way down there and fight. But if the Green Knight were to issue a challenge, I could then accept with Ungrim anyway, because I want to fight him with Ungrim. Ungrim wants to fight. And as a result of that, the Green Knight does 2 wounds to Ungrim, and Ungrim just rolls horribly and fails his attacks, swings at thin air, or just swings through an ethereal part of the Green Knight, an insubstantial part of the Green Knight, and does nothing. So that's very disappointing. And then, yeah, you can see the Green Knight loses 1 wound, because I win the combat, because I've got good static combat resolution here. But he's only taken, I think he's taken 1 wound, or he's got 1 left, I can't remember. But he backs up, and I do not follow him, because I want to use the Anvil's magic missile to finish him off rather than combat. I want to reposition the Hammerers next turn. So I'm just going to magic missile into death, hopefully. Turn 2. For the Dwarves, so the Rangers will be shooting again. The Doomseeker is moving even closer. And the Knights of the Realm, down to 4 plus the BSB, which is really good. So the Rangers doing good work there. The Hammerers reposition themselves, change their ranks a little bit so that they can fit past the Anvil, who then tries to magic missile the Green Knight, but fails. Gyrocopter lands in front of the Pegasus Knights. The reason that I think this is an okay idea, they can't fly over me, because they've got Lady Elise Duchard in there, which means that they don't fly at the moment. So they're going to be stuck fighting a Gyrocopter for a turn. The Gyrocopter, the other one, flaps up there, and it uses its steam gun and kills 10 peasant archers in one go, which is maybe the most it's ever done in its life, not just one game. And then they fall back in good order, all the way over to here, but because they fled past another peasant unit, that caused the men-at-arms to also fall back in good order. So it's quite funny, but it's not getting me any points, because they're all the way over there. The Gyrocopter's not going to finish them by the end of the game. By the way, the Brettonians also have the item on one of the heroes. I'm not sure who it is. It is the item that shuts down flying. I can't remember what it's called, though. It could be the Falcon Horn. I think that's what it is. Just looking at the list here. So, you make a leadership test, and if you pass, your opponent can't fly. Which, that just sounds like such a nonsense thing to put in the game. I don't know why you passing a leadership test would shut off flying to the entire opposition. But on the other hand, maybe it does rein in some ridiculous flyer lists that some armies are capable of putting out. But does it really? Because, let's see. So the things that have fly that are a problem in the game, big dragons, their movement characteristic is already quite high anyway, so not flying doesn't actually affect them that much. The things that are mostly affected by it would be like gyrocopters who drop down to movement 2 when they can't fly. So does it rein in any of the big flying stuff? The Falcon Horn? I think it's definitely bad design that it exists. Shutting down flying, taking your own leadership test is so strange. If it was, it automatically is blown, and then the enemy has to take a leadership test if they want to fly in the next turn. That would be much better, I think. That would be a bit more interactive. I just think that's bad as an item. But it doesn't affect my army that much, because I've only got 2 gyrocopters. So, let's see what's going to happen now. The Green Knight, because I didn't kill him with the magic missile, decides he's going to charge my rangers. And what do you think happens here? The one time I don't take the auto pass fear and terror tests banner on them, because no one with fear and terror ever charges them anymore, the Green Knight charges, they fail the test and run off the table. So the rangers are totally wiped out by failing a leadership test on a 10. Wow, wow, wow. So the Green Knight redirects its charge into the pony cart. And it's not looking great now after that incident, which also means this flank, which was looking amazing, those Knights of the Realm were not going to beat the Rangers, definitely, because there were so few of them left, and they've got to deal with Mr. Seeker, Mr. Doom Seeker as well. Let's see, Gemmel says, do chard in the Pegasus Knights and charging the Green Knight into the only unit with magical attacks is a tactical enigma. Well, the thinking was, I believe, that my opponent wanted the Green Knight to try and kill Ungrim, because the Green Knight does 2 wounds per hit. So I think that was the plan. Rather than it being purely tactical, I think it was really just trying to hunt Ungrim, knowing that I would accept any challenge or accept a challenge, because Ungrim also wanted to kill the Green Knight. So they wanted to fight each other, I think, was the issue there. Let's see. Warhammer Watch says, the immune to fear and terror banner. Yes. I normally put that rune on the Rangers, because it did happen to them once that they failed a panic test and run off the table, so I've put that on them every time. This time, I decided not to bother, because no one ever charges them. And what I could have done is just drop, like, 2 Dwarf Warriors and give them that banner, which is obviously a better choice. And they paid the price. The one game in the last 6 months that I haven't used that banner on them, and they immediately run off the table as soon as the Green Knight flutters its ethereal eyelashes at them. So, the Duke steams into the Thunderers, and the Pegasus Knights, as you can see, human hands in action. Pegasus Knights into the Gyrocopter. Knights of the Realm are scared of the Doomseeker, as they should be. The Peasant Archers shoot at the Hammerers, but not very effective. The Trebuchet fires, and doesn't do too much either. So, actually, it does a little bit. I think it hits something, the Trebuchet. I'm not sure what. I'm not sure if any of the Hammerers are actually been killed. So, the Duke kills off loads of the Thunderers, which is sad. And at this point, I'm thinking I should have just challenged him in round 1 with the Thunderer Champion. The Gyrocopter obviously gets killed by the Pegasus Knights in lance formation, but it held them up for a turn. Okay, so I'm going to have to waste another turn shooting the magic missile at the Green Knight, and then the Hammerers are going to start going this way and waiting to see if there's any crumbs of combat that come their way over here. And at this point, my Gyrocopter over there can't fly anymore because the Falcon Horn was blown furiously. So now the Rangers are gone, I have nothing to take away the points for these Knights of the Realm, so they're just going to probably hide or kill a Doomseeker, or they should probably just run from him, because then they'll get even more points. So my turn 3. The Hammerers try and get themselves in a position so they can strike next turn, but then the Anvil fails to convey them again, so they're stuck there. The Doomseeker makes a super long charge into the Knights of the Realm and kills one of them, which is great. Ruggy says, this looks like most Brett games, heroes doing the work and the rest of the army just off dying somewhere. Yeah, it's just, they need to write army lists and game rules that create the sort of game that you see in the pictures in White Dwarf, or in the army books, or in the rule books. You see these vast infantry battles with everything else playing a supporting role. However, when it comes to the tabletop, you see these overpowered heroes doing all the work, and everything else, because of the scoring system in the old world, it's kind of a liability. Like these knights, when there's only 4 left, they're not going to make a heroic sacrifice into combat, because all they'd be doing is giving up their points. So they really just want to run away and hide to preserve their points. So if you scored points for the units, for the models in those units that you killed, that would totally change things, because then if you're down to your last model in a unit, you would then be more willing to throw it away, because you're not giving away a huge amount of points just on that one model's back. Or if it was a percentage of wounds done to big monsters, so you had a big dragon who was down to its last wound, and as the way the rules are now, you just go and hide behind a building because you don't want to give up 800 points or whatever it would be for that obscene dragon. And it's not very cinematic, hiding to preserve your points. So either I think they should introduce better scenarios that aren't just kill each other, so that dying and sacrificing yourself has different value in the game, or change the rules somehow so that other units are more important in another way. Let's see. Warhammer Orchard. We were talking about making infantry stronger, and maybe all infantry could have the phalanx rule or something similar. Locking flyers in would be a benefit. Infantry do need some kind of boost at the moment, because the game should be built around infantry. That's what all fantasy battles, you watch Lord of the Rings, anything like that, it's massive infantry battles with then ranged support units and wizards and flyers and cavalry supporting or coming in to save the day at the end with a flank charge once the battle's been raging. But that's not really how the game is played at the moment. But it's still a lot of fun. Just hopefully it evolves over time. So the Anvil fails to do Magic Missile on the Green Knight again. And I've turned round so that this Duke is in peril next turn, hopefully. Furious, yes, rank and flank, that's what we want. Not fly and frolic, which is kind of what they do at the moment. Okay, so not much going on here. The Duke and the Thunderers. Okay, so into the Brettonian turn now. So the Green Knight steams into the Anvil. And at this point, we find out that the Anvil does not have magical attacks. Up to now, I've just assumed it did because it's the Anvil of goddamn doom. But no, it does not have magical attacks, so it can't do anything to gain combat resolution against the Green Knight. So the best case scenario for the Anvil is that it's a draw every round. So that's very sad. So in future, if I'm going to take an Anvil, I would probably just slap a 5-point rune, a weapon rune, onto the Anvil, just in case like a Banshee or anything decides to attack it, because otherwise you're going nowhere and you're stopped from spellcasting and dispelling for the entire game by potentially a very cheap unit. So I think that's something that's going to go in my future lists. Just a very small rune on the Anvil to give it magic attacks. So the Gyrocopter is getting pursued by the 4 Knights of the Realm, so they're feeling brave, obviously. And the Thunderers are killed, the Duke flies off the table, but he'll be back soon. Furious says, does your Anvil have rune preservation? In this game it does not, because this is just a bare bones minimalist Anvil, because the only reason it's in there is to propel the Hammerers forward in turn 1 with the game plan. So it's not a critical part of the army in this list, it's purely there as part of the 1500 point investment to get Hammerers and Ungrim fighting. Shane says, I thought Anvil Guard had Gromrill weapons. They do have Gromrill weapons, but apparently Gromrill weapons are not magical. Which is very bizarre, but I'm going to pull up the Anvil stats here. So they have hand weapons, they have Gromrill weapons, but those are not magical attacks. Yeah, all it does is give them armor piercing characteristic of -1. So they are incredibly sharp, but sadly not magical. So I would wonder if perhaps in the future, maybe dwarf units, certain units that have Gromril weapons, maybe you could upgrade them so that the unit just has magical attacks for a fee. You know how you can upgrade the whole unit to be drilled, for example? So like Ironbreakers could upgrade their Gromril axes, just go and dip them in the magic rune pit before the game, before the battle. Sounds good. So Gromril weapons, no, apparently they're not magical attacks. Okay, so on my turn 4, I can't charge the Duke because he doesn't exist at the moment. So the Gyrocopter turns around and steams the Knights of the Realm. Everyone else is just waiting for the Duke to come back or waiting to see if they get to fight some Pegasus Knights. I would say it's very unlikely. A Pegasus Knight Lance formation is definitely not going to charge into the front of this Hammerers units because they would get annihilated. Turn 4, and the Duke comes back in and just hangs out on the hill in a position where he can't be seen. The fight here is still raging on because the Green Knight is having a tough time wounding the anvil. The Pegasus Knights flap over the top of the Hammerers, as well they should. And Lady Duchard pops out the unit so she can start casting some spells as well. And not much going on in that turn. The Trebuchet does land on the Hammerers and kills 3 of them. There you go. And the Gyrocopter is killed by the Knights of the Realm, which is very sad. Then into my turn 5. So the Hammerers spin round to face the Pegasus Knights and Lady Duchard, and the Warriors turn round to face the Duke. And that's it for the turn. Not much going on at all. And then in the next turn for my opponent, Lady Duchard gets out of the way, the Pegasus Knights fly away. The Anvil is under attack again. But the Green Knight keeps failing to do anything to it. It does have a good save and a ward save though. The Duke against the Warriors is not going too swimmingly, as you can see there. Quite a few of them get killed. And then in turn 6 for me, the Hammerers again spin round just to look at somebody. And really, you don't want to leave them in a position where they're going to get flank charged from multiple sides in the final turn of the game. Because theoretically, enough of them could get killed in combat so that they would actually score some points for the opposition. Enough of the Hammerers if they die. So, turn 6, the Warriors are probably going to get finished off by the Duke. The Pegasus Knights declare a charge into the Anvil with the Green Knight as well, so they all steam in there. Some of the Hammerers get killed by magic missiles and shooting, but not many, not enough. And the Anvil gets killed, the Warriors get killed. So I've got my big block left with the Hammerers, that's over half the army's points, and nothing else. And Brettonian units, nothing at all got killed, because the Hammerers were never able to fight anything, because nobody would be silly enough to go near them, and everything was very fast. So in theory, the Hammerers could have gone across the table and claimed 300 points by killing those 3 units, but they tried to stay behind and defend. But through a combination of the Anvil of Doom failing to convey them closer to the enemy, and through the enemy's speed, they were just never able to find anything to fight. So, that turns into... Let me check the score. So that is a 15-5 win for the Brettonians. When considering I didn't kill a single unit, that's a pretty good result. And I think that's probably the worst this army can expect, because no one in their right mind is going to charge the Hammerers. If you want to cast spells at them, they're magic resistance 2. They've got a 5-up ward from the BSB. So it's very tricky to get points off this unit. So you're not going to win by much more than that under this scoring system. So, next up, we have the real Mountain Pass. We accidentally played it in round 2, and now it's coming up in round 4. So, let me pull up this enemy list here, because it's Brettonians again. And the first thing I think is, oh no, it's going to be exactly the same. I don't see how I'm going to reach any of these units with the Hammerers. So, let's have a look at the list. It's slightly different. There's a Duke with very similar... I think it's virtually the same, the Duke. Lady Elise Duchard is still in there. There's a Prophetess level 4 with Lore Familiar, Ruby Ring of Ruin, the Illusion spell lore. There's a Paladin BSB on a Brettonian Warhorse. And then in core, there are 3 units of Knights of the Realm, 2 of 6, 1 of 5, and they're all in the centre. there is a unit of 10 peasant bowmen who are out in front of that house in skirmish formation. I think they have to pay extra for skirmish. Then in special, there are 3 Pegasus Knights in a unit down here. There are 4 Pegasus Knights in a unit. And there are 5 mounted yeomen who are hanging out up there. So, peasant cavalry. And that's it. So a little bit different, this list. But maybe even worse for the hammerers. The Knights of the Realm have not deployed anywhere near the front of the deployment zone. So, the furthest the hammerers can get in turn 1, even if they get blasted across there, is like here. And then the Knights of the Realm could just say, well, you know what, I don't really want to fight hammerers, so we're going to go this way, we're going to go this way. Good luck, mates. And then just leave them there, spinning. So, yeah, I don't see how the hammerers are going to impact this game at all. Just looking at this. So, what I'm trying to do here is create a bit of a kill zone in the middle. So I've got my rangers looking that way so they can murder the peasant archers along with the thunderers on the hill, and any cavalry that come around this way will get shot by thunderers who are good at doing that sort of thing, and the rangers as well. This side, where all the flying stuff is, I'm going to throw my gyrocopters at them and maybe slow them down that way, and the anvil for magic missiling them. I've got the Doomseeker here as well for going after the flying units. Maybe if they were to charge a gyrocopter, for example, then the next turn the Doomseeker charges them, because he's got a pretty decent charge range on him. And the hammerers are going to just blast forward, but not too far, because they don't want to get flank charged by all the Pegasus Knights, really. Even though it wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing in the world just to get them in combat. So the hammerers are going to end up somewhere around here, probably. So, this opposing army here won the Coolest Army Award, and it got my vote because all the Brettonian Knights are in different heraldry. Gemmel says you should have brought a couple of cannons. Well, the problem with this list is that I couldn't afford anything else, because everything that isn't there to get the hammerers in combat is core. So I didn't have enough points for anything. So this is a bit of a silly list. You don't have to go all in on getting the hammerers across the table. So it's not ultra competitive. So look at that. Knights of the Realm, all in their own colours. That's what we like to see. And that's how my Brettonians are going to be. Every single one with their own unique scheme. This one seems to be following the rule that there aren't any greens in Bretonnia, doesn't it? I can't spot any. I'm definitely going to defy that, because I'm just going to use all the colours. All the colours of the rainbow. Mounted yeomen out there, very cool as well, and there's the peasants. Or the scum, as they're known by the lords. So, here are the spells available to my opponent. Plague of Rust, always handy against dwarves. And other notable ones, Column of Crystal, which is a massive vortex, which is impassable terrain, so that would be annoying if that goes off. And then Miasmic Mirage, which means -2 modifier to movement and cannot charge, so that's very scary. So I'll be saving auto dispels for that, and the Crystal Column definitely. So, turn 1 with my vanguards, and then with the anvil, blasts the hammerers across the table, and they're laying down a gauntlet. Would you like to fight us? Now, in this situation, would you be tempted to charge 3 Knights of the Realms units and Pegasus Knights into the hammerers? How do you think that would go? So, if you're only initiative 3, then the hammerers are going to go first. And Ungrim is also going to go first. How much are they going to kill, really? The hammerers are going to have 2 attacks each. The champion would have 3. The BSB would have 3 attacks with the great weapon as well. The runesmith is in there. So they're all AP 2, armor bane 4 on the hammers. So, the more I talk, the more it sounds like it would be a terrible idea for just anyone to hit that unit in the front. But it's not that wide at the moment. It's only about 8 wide. So if you're going to go in, now would maybe be the time, and before they get even wider. So I do think the best option, though, is to just not go anywhere near the hammerers. It pains me to say it, because I should be telling the world to attack me so we can have some fun fights. But I'm the one that built the 1,000 point unit and then moved it towards you. So I'm the one who's responsible for it not being an enticing proposition. And that is a bit of the issue with dwarves in general, or just the old world in general, because killing things is the only thing that matters. If you make a unit that's too good, but it's slow, then why would anyone want to attack it? If if the game was scored in such a way that maybe the hammerers could be in a certain location at the end of the game to score loads of victory points, then suddenly you've got an incentive to kill them, and you'll have to unlock the riddle of how to kill the massive unbreakable hammerer units. You'd have to either send some chaff in there as well, so that you could get more of your units into favourable positions, into the flanks, for example, put something down to stop them turning round or going wider, and then make one giant furious strike from different angles. You have to come up with something other than just move away from them. Because, other than... if this hammer block was even more expensive, if I put even more in it, and my only other significant unit was a unit of like 30 rangers, which also had loads of upgrades and loads of characters and cool stuff in there, you'd have to fight one of them if you want to score any points, or would you just accept a draw? And if you choose to accept a draw, what are these dwarves going to do about it? They're not going to be able to chase you. If you hide at the back of the board, they won't reach you by the end of the game, probably. And if they do start getting close, you just walk away from them slowly. So if you make big units that are good at fighting for the dwarves, people don't fight them. If you make weak units, then people kill them, is what I'm finding at the moment. So what you need to do, ideally I think with dwarves, is build units that people don't want to fight, but they have to because they're being shot by your war machines and other guns that are beyond the unit they don't want to fight. So they have to get through that to get to them, which is sad, but I think that's the way forward. So probably grudge throwers, because they can fire over your own troops. So big pile of grudge throwers, and then unkillable mega units guarding them. So if the enemy want to get to your throwers, they have to go through the unkillable mega unit. And if they choose to hide and take their chances with the grudge throwers scattering, and you manage to kill one unit and they choose not to attack you, then you'd probably get a win. Okay, here we go. The gyrocopters are hiding behind the hill, so the Pegasus Knights don't charge them, because that would be a silly waste of their points. So I should point out now that the Brettonians successfully shut off the flying of the gyrocopters every turn via passing one of their own leadership tests. So Pegasus Knights and the Duke jump out over here, ready to charge like maybe the anvil or the pony carts, probably the anvil. And the other unit comes out as well, and Lady Duchard is hanging out down there also. The Knights start to reform so they can get away from the hammerers, so they're just going to be moving away. And in fact the other unit stays out the hammerers' charge range and starts going this way as well, so they'll be able to dance around the hill to get away from the hammerers. Let's see. Furia says, shame they didn't let Ungrim have core slayers in a grand army, which seems super weird. Hammerers plus a load of tar pits would make a better puzzle for the opponent. So Ungrim, let's have a look. And have a look at what he allows. So he can take one unit of slayers as core. So you could take a massive unit of them. And you can take as Doomseekers as special as well, instead of mercenaries, which is a good reason to have him, because Doomseekers are very cool. And those bonuses, though, are only if he is taken as the general of a royal clan army. So that's so weird that if you don't take him in the royal clan that he can't take slayers as core. I don't know why. I mean, it's not like I have any slayers at the moment. If you take the royal clan, what do you miss out on? You miss out on gyrocopters, you miss out on thunderers. You don't really have any black powder based stuff. I think weirdly you can take the Thane with a handgun in the royal clan. I think you can take handguns, just not thunderers. So you could take royal clan that contains the really cool Thane with the exploding gun that does 1,000,000 wounds with all the runes on it. So yes, it's annoying but interesting at the same time, because it does give you choices. You can't just have everything you want in one list, which gives you some good variety for the dwarves. Every game is going to be different, assuming you don't stick with the same list every time, like a lunatic. So, turn 2 for me. The hammerers give up. They decide, you know what? These knights don't want a peace. We're going to turn around and start moving back and support our own troops. However, the anvil fails to convey them, so they don't come back very far. All they do is turn around on the spot and go into marching column. So next turn, they're going to start going this way. Or if the anvil decides it feels like successfully casting a spell, at any time. That would be handy as well. The Rangers and the Thunderers start blasting and they kill maybe one peasant, which is not very good. The Gyrocopters do not want to charge the Pegasus Knights. The reason for that is because they have countercharge, and because the Gyrocopters can't fly, they're movement 2, and I was outside of 2 inches away from them, which means that if I charge, they can then countercharge because I'm charging from outside my movement characteristic. So it's the same as stand and shoot. If you're close, then they can't do it. But because they would have been able to countercharge and thus kill the Gyrocopters, then I decided to stand there and flame them instead, and actually did some good damage. Killed 1.5 Pegasus Knights, I think. And the pony cart is heading over this way as well. Let's see. So, where is it? The Doomseeker, you'll notice, was right here. He actually charged into the Pegasus Knights, but there's no picture of him afterwards, because I think he was just horribly killed. Yeah, he charged in there, he died, but he did a wound, so that's okay. He may have actually killed one as well. It's hard to tell with these because obviously GW designing models that don't rank up together. So the wings actually fill the space of what should be 3 models, you have 1. So they can't rank up. So some of them are just left off to the side, so you can't really tell who's in the unit and who's not sometimes. So the only way around it surely is to like raise up some of them. But even then, look at this. The wings are totally overlapping the base in the middle, so there's no space at all. So even if you're raised up on a stick, you would have to be like 6 inches off the ground on a very thin stick at the back of the base so that you could fit 3 of them next to each other. So I don't know what I'm going to do when I build mine. I'm thinking of actually magnetising the wings on my Pegasus Knights so I can just take them off so they can rank up when they need to. So, into turn 2 for the evil Brettonians. The Duke charging into the anvil. Pegasus Knights into the pony cart. So they make it, the Duke and his buddies make it into the anvil. And they've got regeneration on them, which is denoted by these little bits of paper. They make it into the pony cart, bypassing the gyros. So there is a wound on each of these units as well. The Knights of the Realm that were running away from the Hammerers decide they're going to go up on the hill and threaten the Gyrocopters with the Prophetess there. Round here, these Knights decide, oh, the Hammerers aren't looking at us anymore, lads. Out from cover, we're going to turn around and get back into the game. The ones on that side are working their way around the flank, but probably won't see too much action before the end. Then, cinematic shot of the Gyrocopter with some Knights staring at it. Spells. Spells, spells, spells. So we've got a crystal column and another randomly moving vortex here. So this one might not hit anybody. The crystal column is just going to stay there and be impassable. Let's see. Saurus Blood. I find most people just agreeing on where Peg Knights actually are. Yes, it's not an ideal situation. So I think magnetising them might be the best way. So I'm very tempted to do that with mine. Okay, we have got the pony cart in combat. It survives against the Pegasus Knights, which is cool. The anvil gets killed by the Duke and buddies, though. So that's sad. Now then, I don't want to be flank charged by them, so I'm going to have to start turning my units round a bit. And the Hammerers now can't be conveyed, so they're just going to do 1 move a turn, which is very sad. The fact that they weren't conveyed last turn, if they were, they would have been, let's see, they would have been about here, which would have been a really good place for them, and the Pegasus Knights probably would not have charged the pony cart, knowing there were Hammerers within range. They would have flown off and done something else. So, having the Hammerers here would be quite a big deal at this stage of the game, because then I could turn them and start moving to defend this lot, which is where all my points are going to be lost from now. So, Gyrocopter into a Pegasus Knight. So, I don't even know where that Pegasus Knight is. But, okay, I think I know here. So, Gyro into the Pegasus Knights, there. The pony cart is killed. The dwarves win the combat. So the Pegasus Knight flees all the way over here. Or, yeah, I think it's a flee. the gyrocopter goes after him, and... Or is it a fallback in good order? Because the fallback wouldn't go back that far. Do you get swift stride with fallback in good order? If you do, that would explain why it went so far. So they're still in combat, but all the way over here. Saurus Blood says, no, you don't. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe that was played incorrectly, or maybe I'm just not remembering exactly what led up to this incident here. So the other gyrocopter popped up on the hill and dropped its steam gun template on the Knights of the Realm, and you can see 2 of them are dead, so that's nice. And the Rangers have turned just a little bit so that the Duke and Pegasus Knights can't charge them in the flank. Turn 3 for the evil Brettonians, and Plague of Rust is cast on the gyrocopter. However, my ingenious plan, the gyrocopter flees from the Knights, so the Knights end up here. They end up catching and killing it, but importantly, they are now in potential charge range of the Hammerers. Because if I hadn't fled, then I would have just been killed in this spot, and then they could have just restrained and reformed. But the fact that they're now out here means that the Hammerers have got a charge in there. It might look like a really long charge because they have to pivot or wheel round before they can charge. However, being drilled means that they can add 3 to this side, so it's going to be a much smaller pivot required to actually touch the unit than it looks initially. So definitely in their wheelhouse to make that charge, I think. Peasant archers just hiding from the Rangers, and the Knights are mostly staying back. So it's one of those situations where my whole army is struggling to deal with one unit here, and the rest of the Brettonians are just kind of hanging out, not really involved. It's entirely the Pegasus Knights that are going to mow through my entire army now. Which is similar to what I faced with the double High Elf Dragon list, where everything was either a dragon or cavalry. The cavalry took no part in the game because they didn't want to get killed by my organ guns, so they just hid for the whole game, and the 2 dragons killed most of my army on their own. So 1,000 points killed most of 2,000 points, I think, by the end. And they avoided the stuff that could hit hard. So it's an issue dwarves run into. So, what's this? A double 6. Okay, what's going on here then? So there are some spells here. There is a vortex, and I think that one moved there. Okay, the other one's gone now. So there's combat between the gyrocopter and all the Pegasus Knights, some of which are just represented by bases at the moment. And the other one, which is after the gyrocopter dies, that one Pegasus Knight overruns and ends up here. So the Hammerers now have something to potentially charge. But obviously it could just flee, and the Hammerers have no chance of catching a Pegasus that's fleeing with swift stride in general. And these ones overran into the flank of the Rangers, so they do get their flank after all. Turn 4 for me. So, the Hammerers try to charge the Pegasus Knight, but obviously it flees. And that's very sad. Then the Dwarf Warriors charged into the flank of the Pegasus Knights that hit the flank of the Rangers. The enemy end up winning slightly, the Rangers fall back in good order and then reform and turn to face them, and they are followed up. And the Dwarf Warriors just gave ground, so they just went back 2 inches, so they're out of combat currently. Those 2 guys are not a separate unit, they're actually here. And you can see that I've killed almost all of the mounted yeomen with my handguns. There's only one left who fell over, but he is still alive. Okay, then Plague of Rust on the Dwarf Warriors. Not very friendly. Mounted yeoman on his own into the back of the Rangers. And the Rangers get killed by everything and then run down horribly. So they die. So the Hammerers have still got nothing to do. In my turn, the Hammerers turn round to face this lot. And it was about to be lunchtime. So in the interest of time saving, I just said, you know what? If you stay out my arc, if you don't come into my arc, I'm not going to charge you. Or if you get out my arc, obviously, and I'm not going to charge you. But even if you stay in it, I'm not going to charge you, because I know you can get away from me. So I'm just not going to charge you. Just to save time, so they don't have to work out exactly how far I can charge, and because obviously they can escape. So turn 5 for the Brettonians. Everyone just moves away from the hammerers and drops a vortex in front of them, just to make sure. And Pegasus Knights kill the Thunderers. The Warriors are still there for now. And not much going on. Turn 6. The Warriors are killed by the Pegasus Knights as well. And there you go, that's the end of the game. So yet again, I do actually kill... Do I kill something? Did I kill the last mounted yeoman? I may well have done. So I did kill a unit in this game. So very similar to the last game against Brettonians. And I don't see any possible way, other than camping in the corner, of doing anything against this sort of Brettonian list with this kind of dwarf list. The hammerers are too easy to avoid. You've got the whole table, most of your stuff flies or is cavalry. So I don't understand a good way of playing the game in any way that's a game, like engaging in the battle that results in winning. It feels like camping in the corner is the only solution against this sort of list, with all this fast stuff that I can't do much to, can't chase down, don't have the guns to deal with it at range. Just hide and see if the enemy wants to accept a draw, or if they want to splat against your defensive wall. But again, it's not a huge loss, so I think it was another 15-5, because obviously this unit's not been scratched. And these last two games obviously weren't the most exciting, but it's the risk you take when you're running this kind of hilarious meme list almost, with the hammerers being yeeted across the table turn 1. And some armies it's going to have no chance to even compete against, really. So I took some photos of the armies at lunchtime. And here are some Warriors of Chaos, which I've already played against. Some more Warriors of Chaos, which is the only army I haven't faced yet, so I'll be facing these next. The Brettonians that I faced earlier on with the Green Knight. The Warriors of Chaos with the Dragon Ogres there, and the Hell Cannon. And the Brettonians that I just faced there, with their lovely individual colour schemes and heraldry. Ruggy says, I think this meme list is the right way to do Royal Clan. Potentially. The reason this one wasn't Royal Clan is because I wanted to run it with the gyrocopters so they could assist with the enemies fleeing from the hammerers. And with Royal Clan you can't take gyrocopters, so I think everyone just flees from the hammerers then. Gloria says, refused flank with hammerers on far flank, yeeted up and turned into the middle, but alas dwarves. Yes. So the anvil has been failing nearly all the conveyance spells I've been casting anyway, which is supposed to be, it's on a 10, so you need to roll a 7 on 2 dice, which is the average result. So you'd expect to do it more often than not, but so far it's not been working out that way. Okay, into the last game against the Warriors of Chaos. Now, this is going to be very interesting because we have very similar game plans here. This Chaos Warrior list, I've faced it before. I've had very close games with it before. I think I've also probably been crushed by it at least once. And it hasn't changed that much, so you may have seen this one before. Let me have a look. I'm going to pull this up here, but it's the two massive infantry blocks. Okay, cracking open the list now. There is an exalted champion in there somewhere, which is the general, which is actually this guy here with the big skull mask. So Mark of Khorne, Ogre Blade, Favour of the Gods, Diabolic Splendor. So he's very good at fighting, basically. And there is a Sorcerer Lord, who is in this unit, on foot. Mark of Chaos Undivided, level 4 Wizard, Demonology, Infernal Puppet, which isn't going to do anything in this game. So, that means that he's got the spell where he can potentially make one of these infantry units fly. If it's this one, I think they're definitely drilled, so they could go into marching column and then fly 36 inches. So that's what they've done to me before, and even if they don't go in marching column, they can fly 24 inches even in this formation, and just land in front of you. So that's pretty scary. So that's similar to what I'm trying to do. Jankmaster, yes, I have played this guy before. Quite a few times with mixed results. But this is the kind of list that my list is designed for. Big infantry blocks. I've got auto dispels, so I can potentially shut down the fly spell that they want to use to fly over me, these units. So I could, in theory, shut this down and get my hammers right in front. Here's the downside, though, because the two... let's have a look. The core unit is 20 Chaos Warriors, but they have Mark of Chaos Undivided and War Banner, which is this unit on the hill. So they're Initiative 4, I think. The unit down there is also Initiative 4, which means that if they charge into the front of the hammerers, they'll all be striking at the same time, except for Ungrim. Ungrim would go first, and then everybody else. So Ungrim could theoretically swing that, because he could wipe out 4 models in the front rank, but he's probably going to fail with at least 1 attack, so let's say he kills 2 or 3. That still swings it in the hammerers' favour. The hammerers have got a 5-up ward from the banner as well, and I've got other heroes fighting in there also. So who will out-yeet whom is the real question here. There are 10 Forsaken, which are there, so they're pretty good at fighting. They don't have any champion or anything. There are 5 Marauder Horsemen with javelins and flails, times 2, the other units there. So they, I think the reason they are positioned that way is because these 2 units have Frenzy. If there's a unit blocking you, that means that a gyrocopter sitting in front of you can't compel you to charge. So I think that's why their line of sight is totally blocked to the enemy, to keep their bloodlust at bay until they're ready to be unleashed. Because my plan, obviously, is going to be to land a gyrocopter in front of one of the frenzying units and draw them away from the fight. That's just obvious. And if they're charging a gyrocopter, then they can't then use the demonic spell to fly halfway across the table either. So that's my plan. Rangers are up here. They're further forward than I would normally put them, because those units are so powerful. If they get in there to fight the Rangers, they could then overrun, and I don't want them to reach anybody else immediately. But if they did, I've put the Thunderers a little bit ahead of the Anvil, so they would hit the Thunderers first, if it comes to that. The Hammerers are going to try and yeet forwards there, and then go wide, and then yeet again, because this unit is easier to kill. That hero, that guy there, let's see how many points the general is. He is 242 points, so he's pretty good. He's a little bit cheaper than Ungrim, but he doesn't give all the buffs, obviously, that Ungrim does, so they're not unbreakable. They are immune to psychology, though. So there's the Anvil, surveying the scene, and here are the spells that are available to the enemy. So Steed of Shadows is the one that gives you Fly 12, which is really bizarre that also this is in the game. Well, first of all, I think it's weird that dwarves can move 23 inches in the first turn. That's definitely weird. Also, what's weird is that you can make an infantry unit fly 36 inches in marching column. I would consider this spell still to be decent if it said you may use this but not march or something. Because it's a lot of movement, and it would still have a purpose if you couldn't march. Flying 12 inches is still significant. You could still fly over the unit that wants to attack you. So it'd be more like a short-range teleport rather than a super long-range teleport, which is what it kind of is now. There's also the Summoning, which is a magic missile. There is an Assailment, which could be useful for combat, and an Enchantment, Demonic Vessel, to give additional attacks and strength. Demonic Vigor as well gives +1 to movement, toughness, and initiative. So that could be important. If you can get that off on one of the units, and then they are fighting the Hammerers, then they could actually theoretically go first against the Hammerers, even with all those charge debuff banners. So, Chaos get the role to go first. So, the Forsaken move up. And these are obviously the sacrificial lambs. They are more likely to want to fight me than anything else. Let's see, Gemmel says, the spells across the laws either feel really strong or entirely useless. That is often a problem. Over the history of Warhammer, that has been a major issue, I think, that spells have either been totally pointless or totally game-breaking. The spells are considerably less game-breaking now than they used to be in 8th edition. Spells don't typically just wipe units immediately anymore like they used to. So it was the purple sun and the dwellers below, wasn't it, in the old days, that would just delete units in one fell swoop. You don't have that so much anymore, but you still do have vastly game-changing spells and the ability to spam them with so many wizards you can take, all doing the same spell, and so many ways to pick your spells so they can all pick the same one. I think picking spells should really be reserved for the top-tier wizards, really. And not just any old crummy wizard should be able to turn up to the battle knowing exactly how much magic they're going to be able to generate and which spells they're going to be able to conjure up. That's what bound spells are for. A bound spell is when you pick your spell. So I think they should get rid of choosing your spells almost entirely. And also level the playing field a bit so none of them are terrible and none of them are overpowered. How about that? Wouldn't that be crazy? They do struggle. It's a lot to balance. There's a lot of armies that all popped up at once, obviously, with rules. So let's give them some time and see if they balance it as time goes on. So, the Marauder Horsemen hiding behind there, behind the woods. And these two units. So the Sorcerer unit is not going forwards. I'm guessing it's because the Sorcerer does not want to go into auto-unbind range and wants to get some spells off. And if you go within 18 of the Runesmith, obviously, auto-unbind, go within 24 of the Anvil, then I've got +3 on my unbind rolls. So maybe that's the case there. Also, they want to present a united front against the Hammerers. Because if the Hammerers go up there, those two units charging me in the front would be striking at the same time as the Hammerers. So there's so many bodies there that I don't know how that would go. And it's possible it would go against me with both those units. So, Marauder Horseman blocking me as well. What is my plan for the next round from this situation? I lose a few rangers, by the way, to a magic missile, but nothing major. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put a gyrocopter, land it about there. So the reason this is possible is because there's a gap between the horsemen and the... which ones are these? Chosen? Yeah, the chosen warriors. So if I land about here, in their front arc, so they have to declare a charge on me because they're frenzied. I'll make sure no one else is within charge range of them, only the gyrocopter. So they have to charge the gyro. I can then potentially flee away this way, and they have to pursue me in that direction. That takes them away from the centre, which is where the action's going to be with the Hammerers soon. The Rangers and the Anvil of Doom and the Thunderers have got a choice. I'm going to try and shoot the Knights because they're always a nice easy target for the AP I've got on my weapons on the hill, so that's good. I can kill 5 Knights quite handily. The Marauder Horsemen, I want to get them out of the way so they can't do a weird skirmish or charge through the gap into anything I don't want to be hit yet. Ponycart's going to move up to support the Hammerers. The Gyrocopter is going to probably try and scorch them. So, here we go. My turn 1. And you can see that I've shot down the Marauder Horseman. I've shot down a Chaos Knight. Jay says, what have you found to be the most fun matchup versus Dwarves? Well, anything where there is infantry, for a start, tends to be fun because it feels like an actual battle. And they generally have to walk towards you quite slowly. So the shooting, that's not that great in this edition at the moment, actually has a chance to do something to them. Brettonians are quite often good games, but it depends on the list. With the list I've brought here, obviously those 2 Brettonian games weren't really games. Normally, with the lists I take, Brettonians is a good matchup. Loads of organ guns are really good against Brettonians. They're great at taking out knights. Pegasus Knights probably don't like the sight of organ guns either. And you can space them out a bit so they can only kill 1 at a time. What else? The Anvil is pretty good against those kind of units as well, with its long range. So Brettonians has led to favourable matchups in the past. I don't know, in terms of it being a fun, exciting game, I think this kind of list, where it's got a little bit of speed, it's got some big infantry blocks, so it is possible to kind of play the game with them and try and block them. Some of them can fly over your head 36 inches, but not all of them. So you can play a little bit. They're not all just going to fly away. So it feels like it is going to be a battle. So you can see that the Hammerers have moved out in front of the Rangers and then expanded. And first of all, they moved. Let's have a look where they were. They were here. They took the first move, got to there, and then the Anvil successfully conveyed them, so they were then able to go wider. and now they're facing down the Forsaken, who have Frenzy, so they have to charge me. Then I'm also staying out of charge range of all the other units, so I get hit by 1 unit at a time, which is important, I think. However, those guys, if they do charge in, I think I'll be striking at the same time as them as well. I think they're also Initiative 4. So the Hammerers go up to Initiative 4 when you charge them, and then deny your Initiative bonus for the charge. So if you're flat Initiative 4 already, you strike at the same time. So it's going to be down to Ungrim to clear out the front rank, really. And actually, it's not Frenzy they have. I think it's Impetuous. Is it? Someone let me know if it's Impetuous that Forsaken have rather than Frenzy. Because, is that purely from the Mark of Khorne? They're Forsaken by Khorne, but does that give them Frenzy or is it Impetuous? It says other dwarves. Yeah, other dwarves, it's a fun game as well. Because, well, in theory it should be a really boring game because you're not moving much. But in practice, you're both struggling with the same things. You're both slow. Your shooting isn't as good as you'd like it to be. So you can cancel each other out and actually have a good fight in the middle sometimes. So, let's see what's going to happen now as the Chaos Warriors start declaring charges. Gemmel says it is Impetuous, but the Mark of Khorne gives Frenzy. So Forsaken by Khorne I think is different from the Mark of Khorne. Gemmel says Khorne gives them Hatred. Okay. Bad Squiddo Games in the chat. Now, sad to say there aren't any Bad Squiddo miniatures available in this photo here. But my dwarves, controversially, will be adding 2 Bad Squiddo units to their ranks. I'll tell you right now that one of them is an Anvil of Doom featuring only Bad Squiddo miniatures. So once I get that done, I'll make some videos on that because that's a very nice alternative miniature for those of us that don't dabble in 3D printing and prefer their miniatures the old-fashioned way. Yes, 2 units, that's right. 2 dwarf units will be made purely from Bad Squiddo products. So, here we go, turn 2 for Chaos. The Impetuosity test is failed, but Demonic Vigour is cast on them first, which means that they're actually going to be quite tough in the fight. Sora says, I think my opponent at the last tournament was doing it wrong there. It's entirely possible that people are playing Old World rules wrong because the rulebook is very bizarre. So they fail the test, so they have to charge me. The Khorne chosen block has to charge the gyrocopter. These knights also charge the gyrocopter. So, what I was thinking was that maybe the knights are charging purely so I flee, so that they can then redirect into the rangers. But then, I thought to myself, what are 4 Chaos Knights really going to do against, like, 13 rangers? And the answer is probably not much. At which point, if we go back to the wide shot for a second, you'll see that the Doomseeker is there. So a Doomseeker charging into Chaos Knights, who are stuck in combat with great weapon-wielding rangers, I think that would very quickly go my way. So I don't think they really want to charge the rangers in the front. They would avoid the stand and shoot if they charge into the gyrocopter first and then redirect, because you can't stand and shoot against a redirected charge. So it's a valid strategy if you want to charge them into the front to avoid it. Charge something else that you know is going to flee first. So, here we go. The gyrocopter is actually dead because it gets caught. It flees a very tiny amount. I just roll really badly and it only gets to about there and gets caught by the knights, who then manage to pass a test so they can reform afterwards and face the rangers. And this unit is now facing over here after they attempted to charge the gyro as well. So the gyro is dead, but it stopped these units in their tracks for a turn. And I can live with that. The Forsaken into the Hammerers. Let's see how much Ungrim can do, because he's going to be striking first. So if he can kill like 3 of them, that's only 2 of them striking at me, which is worthless. So the Marauder Horsemen charge into the gyrocopter, and I think one of them gets killed on the difficult terrain on the way in, and then the gyrocopter kills one of them as well, I think. So, what is going on here? Well, you'll notice the Hammerers are now there. That's because Ungrim killed 4 off the front rank. They did nothing, and then the remaining Hammerers did a little bit more. There were still some left in the unit. No, actually, I think I might have killed them all. I think I just outright slaughtered the whole unit with the Hammerers, and then overran and went so far that I ended up within 2 inches of this block of Chaos Warriors with a level 4 sorcerer in it, with my turn next. And the gyrocopter won combat against the marauders with flails, who just couldn't crack through it at all. They gave ground. The gyrocopter decided not to follow up, because now we are in the dream situation. We've got a super wide unit of hammerers facing off against a very expensive unit at point blank range. Now, if you flee from the hammerers here, on average you escape. But we've got their little buddy here, Mr. Gyrocopter, who can also charge. And if you flee from a gyrocopter, it's movement 9 and it's got swift stride. So the chances are very slim that you'll actually escape from it. So this is a real dilemma for these Chaos Warriors now. Do you take a charge in the front from from the hammerers that can go even wider than this before they charge you? I can stick one on that end, maybe another one on that end. So they're quite wide. Ungrim is probably going to kill a few of them. The hammerers are going to be striking first. Probably whomp quite a few. The BSB and the runesmith might do some damage as well. You're not going to be able to hit back with much. You're going to lose the combat by a lot. And they're just going to chomp through you. The gyrocopter's also going to be charging as well. So if you hold, that would get you in the flank. Do some impact hits, potentially. Get the bonus for flank charge. So you're going to lose by a lot. So, what do? Do you hold or do you flee? So that's the dilemma I'm going to present to my opponent at the start of my turn 2. So the fact that the Forsaken were forced with Impetuous, the failing that test, they had to charge the hammerers, has now put the hammerers really close to their goal. Because if I can get rid of that unit, what's left? 3 horsemen, 4 Chaos Knights that are going to get shot to death this turn, and 1 big block of Chosen. And even that 1 big block isn't going to kill the rest of my army before the end of the game. So the Doomseeker charges the Chaos Knights. The Pony Cart charges the Marauder Horsemen through difficult terrain. The Gyrocopter and the Hammerers charge the big block of Chaos Warriors with the level 4. What do you think the reaction is going to be? Hold or flee? What do you think it's going to be, and then what would you do? So if you're watching this live, you can pause it and write out a comment on what you would do in this situation if you were face down with the Hammerers containing Ungrim and a Gyrocopter all charging you. Would you hold and take massive casualties in combat, or would you flee with the chance to maybe roll high and maybe the Gyrocopter rolls low and doesn't catch you? So we've got a mixed reaction in the chat already here. So Ruggy says they should flee. Gemmel and Jay think that maybe holding and accepting their fate is the best option. I wasn't sure what the best option was, because if you succeed with running away and the Gyrocopter does not reach you, then you're still at full power next turn. If you take the charge, you're going to be losing a lot of this unit, and you're going to be greatly diminished for later on. Furious says hold because the gods will be displeased. I was leaning towards thinking my opponent was going to hold, only because I think this Gyrocopter is quite likely to catch them. So how far are they likely to go? With a flee. 2 dice, so they're likely to flee 7 inches. So the Gyrocopter is probably about that far away now. So you may end up being about a foot away from the Gyrocopter, or maybe 13, 14, maybe 15 inches away from the Gyrocopter. It already moves 9, and then it's the highest of 2 dice plus Swift Stride. So on average, that thing is going to get you. That Gyrocopter is going to mow down the whole unit with its propellers. But it might not. So, let's see. The cart makes it into the flail-wielding Marauder Horseman, and then the Chaos Warriors try to flee. The Gyrocopter cuts them down mercilessly with its propeller blades, just does a dive bombing, gets in there, grinds them all up in its little propellers, and he just reaches out of the cockpit and gives one of them a slap on the back of the head to finish them off as well. The Dream. A Gyrocopter has just chased down. Let's see how many points that was. That unit is 650 points almost. And that Gyrocopter has just massacred them. So, let's see. Gemmel says, you should have flown them 36 inches to the side of the table. Ah ha 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 ha! that reminds me, let's go back and look at why that wasn't done. So, the reason they did not fly in this situation here, in this position, they could not fly 36 inches because these ones weren't drilled. So they couldn't go into marching column and then fly 36 inches. So they would have flown 24 inches. And the presence of the pony cart meant that flying 24 inches would not be possible because the pony cart is there. So they've got nowhere to land. They would have been landing somewhere like here, which they can't do because the pony cart's there. And there's not enough space for them to like turn and also land in here because of my other units. There's not a big enough gap for them. So the pony cart blocked the move, which is why they didn't attempt it last turn. So let's go back. So my opponent explained the reasoning for the flee rather than the hold. And what he said was that he felt that if he held, then the hammerers would just obliterate the unit, guaranteed. If they don't finish them off in one turn, definitely in two. So it's a definite death. Whereas fleeing, there's a chance that you might actually survive. If the gyrocopter doesn't roll very high on its charge and you make it away, you're at full strength, ready to turn round again at full power. And you'll have backup at that point, because the other units will be able to maybe come in and help out. Or you can just escape for the whole game. And then the hammerers would struggle to chase you and keep up with you, because they're so slow. So I do understand that logic. You roll the dice instead of just accepting that they're certainly going to die, so I do understand it. However, it's now happened very fast. The hammerers, though, did not catch the unit, so they can't reform at the end of it, whereas the gyrocopter could, but it's a skirmisher anyway, so it doesn't need to reform. The pony cart giveth and taketh movement away. It sure does. So, this is something to consider if you're going up. If you're running something like this, you want to box in a unit. If it has the potential to fly, where can it fly to? And are you leaving big enough gaps between your units for it to fly over you and land? Always something to check out. Now in this situation, it was pure luck, because I was under the impression that the unit could fly 36 inches. I thought they were all drilled, but it's just the chosen that are drilled, not that unit. So it just so happened that the pony cart was positioned there in such a way that they couldn't physically land. So that was luck. But that is something to consider in games in general. If there's a flying unit, where could it land, and is there a way I can just rotate my unit a bit or move one unit forward a bit that blocks off its landing position? And if it can't land here, it can't then do extra move to go there. So it would have to then be in front of you or go sideways, not over you. So where you can block flyers, you should always be looking out for that. Okay, well this is going well. The Chaos Knights are fleeing because they fled from the Doomseeker. The Doomseeker tried to charge them in the flank. I explained the Doomseeker's combat prowess, and the Chaos Knights ran away. Which they can do because those ones are not immune to psychology. The Chosen with the Mark of Khorne are immune to psychology, but these guys aren't. So they're able to flee as a charge reaction, and they make it all the way over there. The pony cart kills a Marauder Horseman, which is nice, and survives. And all my shooting, I shoot at the Chaos Knights that fled from the charge, and they're down to 1, which means they're going to be rallying on a double 1 now, this Chaos Knight, so he's as good as dead. The Rangers rotate themselves a little bit so that if the Chosen charge into the Doomseeker, if they overrun, they won't go into the Rangers. That's my plan anyway. But they are drilled, so they could add 3 to this side. But my thinking was that I'd lined them up sufficiently so that even 3 would require a big overrun to touch the Rangers, because they'd be going straight forward if they kill the Doomseeker and overrun, and they'd be going like down there. So they'd probably end up touching them somewhere down here, so they'd need a decent roll to make it. So really I could have just turned them more, but I felt like this was enough. So, turn 3 for Chaos. And they go wide and they charge the Doomseeker, and you can see that maybe my calculation was a little bit off here. And I should have just turned the Rangers a bit more, like more parallel to the unit, so that an overrun definitely can't touch them. Into the Doomseeker. The Doomseeker and the Chaos Lord, or the Exalted Champion, get into a challenge. And then in the middle, a lot of dice are thrown at the Doomseeker. Those are the attacks. Those are the hit rolls that failed, and those are the 2 wounds. The Doomseeker is alive, because the Exalted Champion failed to do anything to him. which is hilarious. And the Doomseeker is obviously unbreakable, so that unit is now locked in place for another turn. So, gives the Rangers another chance to think through their positioning a bit better and not be so lazy. And then, in my turn, you can see the Hammerers have spun round, and then the Anvil conveys them forwards. And look at this. This is the nightmare for anyone. A huge, super wide line of Hammerers with Ungrim, with a BSB, with a Runesmith. What are you going to do about it? The Gyrocopter charged into the Marauders that were fighting the Pony Cart, and with their combined might, they destroyed that unit. And this night is not long for this world, so it's really just this big blob. So I've got two choices here. Do I play the boring game and run all my units away from it? Because how many points are in there? Let's see. The Exalted Champion's about 250, and the Chosen are about 550. So we've got about 800 points there. So, what's the most they could kill if I run away from them? The Rangers can get away. The Thunderers could go this way. The Warriors could go that way. The Anvil can't move, so they could catch the Anvil. So they are certainly not going to make up the amount of points that I've killed by the end of the game if I choose to run away. However, that's not very exciting. So what I want to do is get as little killed as possible, but I want the Hammerers to fight the Chosen. So I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen. So, here we go. This round, the Chosen do actually kill the Doomseeker, and they overrun up to there, and then turn round so that they're facing the Rangers and the Warriors. Now, they could charge either of them, but it's going to be complicated either way. They are drilled, so they could make it less complicated, but if they go in like this and, for example, charge the Rangers, they'd have to swing round and then end up touching the Warriors as well. So one of those weird situations where you're touching two units with a charge. However, very crucially, when the Doomseeker died in the challenge, his death blow did an unsaved wound to the Exalted Champion. So he has actually taken a wound, so he's only got 2 left. So the Rangers flee from the charge of the Chosen, and they redirect into the Dwarf Warriors. So the Rangers are more expensive, so they're just going to run away and preserve their points. The Hammerers are the ones that I want to do the fighting with. The Chaos Unit Champion and the Dwarf Champion are having a little fight there. And the Dwarf Warriors lose and flee. The Chosen overrun and go into the Thunderers. Okay, my turn 4. The Hammerers making their way across the table still, with the Pony Carters back up, which is making them faster because it's still alive somehow at this stage of the game. And the Gyrocopter as well. The Rangers are just going to stay over there. The Thunderers issue a challenge, and they get slaughtered. And then, let's see, I think there is an overrun. And yes, so they, hold on. Because I think they just wiped out the unit. Oh no, actually I remember. They nearly wiped out the unit, I think, and then caught them because I only fled like 2 inches with them, with the remaining Thunderers. And then they caught them, which is why they're here, instead of overrunning into the Warriors who are trying to get out of the way as fast as possible. So, turn 5 for Chaos. They charge the Warriors. In this position, I decided to flee, because they're going to die if they get charged anyway, so why not flee and make them, because I'd flee straight off the table, which means that they would come down here and then be stuck facing that way. Whereas, if they charge me and kill me, they might end up fleeing off the table, or pursuing me off the table, which I don't really want, because I want the Hammerers to catch them, so I don't want them going that far. So my estimation was that to make them travel the least distance forward was to just flee off the table, and then let their charge move take them up to here. So we'll see if that works out. And it looks like it has. So, ran off the table. They didn't catch me, so they don't get anything for the banner because it ran off the table. And turn 5 for me. Okay, the Hammerers get conveyed by the Anvil, and they make a massive move. They have to change the ranks because of this terrain here. So they have to go a bit narrower now. But, turn 6 for the Forces of Chaos, and they're facing the wrong way, so they turn round to look at the Hammerers. So, on my turn 6, there's going to be a charge. So, here we go. This is the only thing that's worth doing now. Everything else is irrelevant. I do enchant, though, on my turn. Enchant the Hammerers, and they charge into the front of the Chosen. So we are quite wide, but not full width because of this bit of terrain. So I had to not go quite as wide as I would have liked, but the Chosen also aren't super wide right now. The most critical thing here, so I don't think the unit's going to wipe each other out, is can the Hammerers win by enough to break the Chosen and make them run off the table? But we're going to have a challenge. We're going to have Ungrim versus the Exalted Champion of Chaos. And my opponent is quite confident that if Ungrim doesn't kill him, then the Exalted Champion can kill Ungrim, because the Exalted Champion has been rolling on the Gods table and been getting extra stats all the way through the game, so he's been going up in strength. So even though Ungrim is toughness 6, I think he's now at strength 8, this guy. So he could definitely kill Ungrim, potentially, if I don't kill him. So, let's see, can Ungrim take 2 wounds off an Exalted Champion who was wounded previously by the death blow of a Doomseeker? Yes, Ungrim cuts him down, exactly the right amount of wounds done. 2 wounds. So if that Doomseeker hadn't done that final wound before, he would still be alive. And there, just to pose, there's the ghost of the Doomseeker coming back to life to join in the celebration. Doomseeker and Ungrim murder the Exalted Champion of Chaos. Then the combat rages on, and the Hammerers actually roll really badly. They were so inspired looking at Ungrim fighting the Exalted Champion, but at the same time they were also so distracted by it. It was so impressive just lopping off the Exalted Champion's head with his enormously oversized axe that they forgot to swing their hammers very well, and they only killed 2. And then they lost 2 in retaliation as well. So the Hammerers win by a decent margin, because I put 2 on there. I've got the BSB in here as well. And the enemy don't have that much combat res, because they don't have a BSB. They do have a rank. But they fail their leadership test, and there's no BSB to re-roll it, and they run straight off the table. At which point the Hammerers restrain, so they don't have to follow them off the table, and then Ungrim back in the unit annihilated the entire Chaos army. So, the Hammerers finally get to do something really significant. Game 1 and Game 5 they did the most. This game obviously they killed a very expensive unit and the enemy general. They kind of contributed to the gyrocopter single-handedly killing the other expensive unit as well. So I'd put down the gyrocopter as the MVP. Purely, well, maybe the Doomseeker actually. Doomseeker and the gyrocopter. The copter in cutting down the big expensive unit, the Doomseeker for blocking the Chosen for a turn and then doing a wound to the Exalted Champion with his death blow. So, I gave away about 300 points in the game with the units I lost. And obviously I killed everything in the opposing army, so it ended up being a 19-1 win to the Dwarves. And a very impressive display by the Dwarves there in the final game. Let me see where that put me in the rankings, because as I said earlier, there were only 6 players at this event. It was mostly people who were too slow to get a ticket to the Warhammer World event that was on the same weekend, I think, which was obviously advertised like way months in advance, the Warhammer World event, before this one was up, I think. So 6 of us, and I ended up finishing 3rd, which isn't bad for 2 wins. The initial win was very small against Chaos Warriors. Then there were 2 losses to Brettonians that were enormous, because I just couldn't do anything against the speed. And then a small loss against another Chaos Warriors, and then this enormous win against Chaos Warriors as well. So the 2 games that went well, what were the common denominators? They were not particularly fast lists, and I was able to pen them in with my Hammerers blasting across the table. And that's what caused the wins. The enemy were not fast enough to hide from the Hammerers. So what does this teach us? It teaches us that sadly, the way to play Warhammer at the moment is not very aesthetically pleasing, and it's not really in keeping with how we want the game to be played, I think. The rule set should be designed so that mass infantry blocks are doing the fighting, and the game is all about, can you set up the angles, can you throw a unit in front of the units that you don't want to be fighting yet, so you hold them up so that you can get some wounds in on something else before it gets there. Can you use the angles to get the units into matchups that you want and deny the enemy the matchups they want? And then your spellcasters and your dragons and your ranged units are providing support, looking for flanks, looking to weaken units that you're about to charge, instead of just doing the whole job on their own. which is what they're doing at the moment, particularly the flying units, are very powerful right now. There's the one item that just shuts down flying that Brettonians have, which is really weird that that exists in the game. I think that's such an odd thing to have. But if the dwarves could shut down flying, that would be amazing. I would like to see, if you're going to keep everything else in the game the same, you're going to give dwarves something different to level the playing field. Maybe give the Anvil of Doom options to different runes, so you could pick runes before the game, which ones you want to have inlaid into your anvil, and maybe you could have one that makes flying more difficult or makes flying slower. That would be very helpful. If it's a rune that like changes the weather or something, that would be pretty cool. I think that would be thematic enough for the dwarves to do something like that. I'm sure they could come up with something. And maybe the flyers have to take a leadership test and their movement is reduced or something. So it wouldn't be too overpowered. Maybe their movement is reduced a little bit regardless, but if they fail the leadership, it's super reduced. Something along those lines. So you've got more options with your anvil, so whatever the current meta is strong, you could then tailor your anvil to bring the dwarves a bit closer. You don't want to obviously make the dwarves overpowered, or make anything else obsolete. But I just think they need something. Dwarves definitely need some more tricks, because as it stands at the moment, I'm working on a totally different kind of list, because this list, while it is hilarious and fun in certain matchups, it also leads to just terrible games against opponents that don't need to engage you, and there's no reason for them to do that. It's not up to your opponent to make the game entertaining if you're just shoving a 1,000 point deathstar at them. That's not their job. So the rules should be what makes it a fun game, and the rules should force both players into a play style that is entertaining for everyone. And at the moment, they're not doing that particularly, the rules, so you're going to have to come up with a list that forces the enemy to engage you in entertaining ways. So what I'm looking at is big unkillable units and less side chaff units that give away points so easily. So we'll see what I can come up with, and there will definitely be plenty more old world games and old world tournaments, along with all the other game systems covered on this channel. In fact, next up in 2 weeks is Clash of Kings, the biggest Kings of War tournament ever, over 200 players in Nottingham, 6 games. I'm going to be taking the Abyssal Dwarfs to that, so very evil dwarves. And then after that, let's check my calendar here. After that, we've got some Old World in early October already booked in, and in November. I think there's some Sigmar events in between there as well. There's obviously going to be the weekly battle reports, which are... it depends what tournament's happening. So, if I've got an Age of Sigmar tournament at the weekend, I try to definitely do an Old World battle report. So if I've got an Old World battle report coming up, then I try to do an Age of Sigmar battle report if it's an Old World tournament. So there's a bit of mixture of both. Next week, I'm playing an Age of Sigmar game and an Old World game. So there's going to be battle reports for both next week. So keeping everyone entertained. And hopefully everyone appreciates the mixed content on the channel. And I know if a channel covers multiple different game systems, that's not optimal. And sometimes you do lose subscribers for that. Especially if it's a lesser known game system and people see it and think, I don't want to see this rubbish, and they just hit unsubscribe. Like, I look at my analytics and can see how many subscribers are gained from watching each video. And certain game systems, I know if I upload one of those videos, it's going to lose like 2 subscribers each time. But I'm not really that concerned about that, because I just cover every game that I play. And I play a lot of game systems, and hopefully even more going forward. I would like to play more Kings of War if there was more going on in Nottingham, and hopefully there will be soon. There's also Dead Zone that I play as well. Not a lot of events for that. I am going to be running Kings of War and Dead Zone events in October myself to try and boost the community a bit, so I might do some kind of video coverage of that. Ruggy says, mostly here for Old World War stuff, but I watch some of the AOS stuff from time to time. Yeah, and I think that's fair. People don't play as many game systems as I do. People don't necessarily have the free time to play that many games. So I expect most people on the channel only or mostly follow one game system. And I think that's more than reasonable. And I think they can just tolerate the other video thumbnails popping up on their feed sometimes. Gemmel is here for Rem, apparently. Well, we are going to try and get another game in soon, actually, with Rem. I think he's going to use his Wood Elves next time. And he's not back on tour until the end of September, I think. So we should be able to get at least another one in before then. And I'm trying to get him to a tournament as well. But he does play very slowly at the moment. The games are typically taking about 5 hours right now. So we'll try and shave his game time down to 3 hours, and then we can get him into a tournament setting. So we shall see. Andy is okay though. Well, that's good to know. That if you can tolerate me, so you can get the small doses of Rem now and then, which is what you're really here for. Okay, so any thoughts on anything that came up during this event? If you've spotted any rules that were played incorrectly, then let me know, obviously, because even though it's been out for months now, we are still learning. There's something new that comes up at every event, some kind of weird interaction we hadn't spotted before, or some new, strange, unforeseen situation. Let's see. Farlane says, not sure if I mentioned it, but Ungrim Hammerers can't also have a Thane in it because they are unbreakable. Non-unbreakable characters can't join unbreakable units. That is fascinating. Okay, I did not know that. So that's definitely going to be something I'll have to look at the precise wording on. But I'll take your word for it that that's the end result. But I'll see the exact interactions and whether that is something that's in any way viable. And yes, no, you don't need to apologise because we need to be getting the rules right. So that is very good to know. So, does that mean you can't take any other characters in the unit if Ungrim is in there? Except unbreakable characters. That would be very interesting, and that would require a little bit of a rejig. So if I was running something similar to this, and the other characters have to be away from Ungrim, because he obviously goes in the Hammerers to make them unbreakable. So the Rangers could gain some of the heroes. They actually benefit more from a Runesmith because they would get Armor Bane 2 on their crossbows. And the BSB going in there. I'm actually thinking about putting some characters in the Rangers with guns, potentially. Or maybe even a character, when there's no Ungrim, it sounds like, if I could put a character with a gun inside the Hammerers to give them a stand and shoot would be kind of fun as well. There's a lot of things I want to play around with, but I will definitely keep that in mind, because that's not something that's really come up for me before. So, the only thing that is interesting about the interaction to me that I would have to dive into the rules for is that they are gaining Unbreakable by having Ungrim in there. So, are they really joining an unbreakable unit, or are they joining a unit that temporarily has the unbreakable rule? So that's why I think it's going to be interesting to see exactly how it's all worded and how that shakes out. Because it might be explicitly covered in the rules, I'll have to check. But if there's something about if a unit is already in, if a hero is already in a unit that's not unbreakable, and then an unbreakable hero joins that unit who has a special rule that says when he is in that unit they become unbreakable, would the other characters have to leave? Is that a thing that happens? Can they stay in there so everyone's unbreakable? So it could be something that needs an FAQ, or it could just be something that's very obvious from within the rules, but I would have to have a look purely because of that issue. It's a very strange one. I don't think it's going to be necessarily straightforward, and I'm going to sneeze. Four sneezes it was. So one of the guinea pigs was sneezing earlier as well. Gemmel says, it makes sense the Thane just gets unbreakable. It would, because he's part of the Hammerer unit that is gaining unbreakable by the presence of Ungrim. It is a weird one though, but I don't know how straightforward it is. I'll have to dive into the rules and check. So that's going to be one for the comments if someone pours through the rulebook to decide exactly what order those things happen, and whether it's legal for the Thane to be in the unit that then Ungrim joins, and his special rule says he makes them unbreakable. So they weren't unbreakable when the Thane joined. So it's a weird one, and that's going to need some digging to get to the bottom of that. Other than that, if anyone's got any not just rules, but if anyone's got any tactical tips, dwarf list building tips. Also, if you've picked up anything from this channel that you've used in your games, let me know as well. That's always good to hear. There have been a couple of people at events recently who told me they've picked up some things on this channel, which is good. It's not even just necessarily tricks I've used. Sometimes it's things my opponents have done. Sometimes it's list building things. Sometimes it's just the way of looking at a situation and why you want to position units a certain way that makes sense because of something that's about to happen, maybe even on the other side of the table. But if you're planning ahead and positioning in a certain way because something is going to be heading in a particular direction and you need to be prepared for it, just different factors to think about when you're positioning your units is something that takes a while and a lot of practice. So hopefully watching these kinds of videos puts that all in your mind, because I'm trying to explain exactly why I'm doing everything that I'm doing, and then why it either worked or didn't work, and what my opponent did to counter it, and why my list is no good against certain other things, and what could be changed about it. So hopefully you get all the lessons that I do from playing these games, and maybe more, because I also have a bit of hindsight as well when I'm looking back on them. And it's obviously helpful for me to go over these games as well. I can learn from my own mistakes instead of just telling you about them, and also telling you how to beat me usually as well. Okay, thanks for watching everybody. Don't forget to like the video. We had plenty of viewers for this one, which is good. And yes, don't forget to check out all the social media shenanigans in the description. There is a Discord server in there, which I'm trying to get more active as well. So you can see what's coming up, what I'm painting in there as well. And obviously, if you like this non-stop flow of content that you may find spicy, tingling, sizzling, finger-licking good, dishlicious, succulent, tender, and moist, then why not pledge your entire life savings on the Patreon or the PayPal? And if you can't afford your entire life savings because you need frivolous purchases such as food or rent, then I suppose a portion of the life savings would be acceptable. I suppose people do have to eat occasionally, so I can allow that. So you've got a little bit of leeway there. Okay. All that remains to be said, I think, at this point, other than thanking everyone again for tuning in all the way through. Good night out there, whatever you are.